Chapter 945. Lung Wan looked as if she had just been given a huge fright. She struggled even more furiously than before, and even her body began to tremble uncontrollably. As Lu Benlei's face inched closer and closer, her body trembled even more violently. She tried her best to restrain herself from speaking, but very, very pleading words escaped from her lips. "Let me go. Please let me go. Let me go." Lu Benlei's actions halted for a moment, as if he was about to stop, but in just 2 short seconds he seemed to have made up his mind about something, and he lowered his head once more. His lips inched closer and closer to hers, and she could even feel his breath. In that instant, the man before her didn't feel like the Lu Benlei she knew. Instead, he felt like a man-eating beast in the darkness of the night. Lung Wan was so scared that tears began trickling down the corners of her eyes. The panicked words that came out of her mouth began to change, and eventually, they turned into a shriek. It was true that he liked her, and he couldn't bear to part with her. Even though he had made up his mind, he still couldn't bring himself to do it. Just when he was just a centimeter away from her lips, Lu Benlei suddenly stopped. He opened his eyes only to see her tear-stained face, as well as the look of rejection, disgust, hatred, and fear on her face. Rejection, disgust, hatred. Lu Benlei stared at her for a moment, but all of a sudden, all of his strength seemed to have left him. His grip on her wrist abruptly disappeared. She easily broke free from him, as if he was a dreadful beast. She took a few steps back, widening the distance between the two of them. Only then did she stop. She didn't even look at him. Instead, she hugged her arms and leaned against the wall, trembling uncontrollably. Seeing her in such a state made his heart ache. Lu Benlei subconsciously averted his gaze. He could clearly hear her sobbing. He wanted to comfort her, but he knew that if he were to stand up now, she would only become even more flustered and afraid. He stared out the window for a moment before pretending to be unconscious from his drunkenness. Then he slumped onto the table and fell asleep. After a long time, the sound of sobbing finally disappeared. He heard her footsteps, which were very light and timid. She seemed to look at him for a while to make sure he was really asleep. Then she walked out of the private room and came back with the waiter to send him to the car. Throughout the entire process, not to mention showing concern for him, she didn't even get close to him. When she arrived at his place, she had already called his assistant in advance. Just like when they came out of the bar, she still didn't approach him. She just ordered her assistant to send him upstairs. After he lay down on the bed, she handed a cup of soup to the assistant and said that she still had things to do. She asked the assistant to take care of him and left in a hurry. He didn't open his eyes until the sound of the door closing came from the living room. When the assistant saw him, he immediately held up the hangover soup and said, "Boss Lu, this is the soup that Sister Lung just cooked for you. Have some." Lu Benlei glanced at the bowl of hangover soup in his assistant's hands, but he didn't take it. Instead, he glanced at the clock on the wall and saw that it was already 1 in the morning. Thus, he turned to his assistant and said, "It's getting late, you should head back to rest. But Sister Lung said that I should stay here to take care of myself." Before the assistant could finish his words, Lu Benlei had already interjected, "I'm fine. Just leave when she asks you to." Chapter 946. Before the assistant could finish his words, Lu Benlei had already interjected, "I'm fine. Just leave when I say so." After saying those words, Lu Benlei got off the bed and walked into the bathroom. By the time he took a shower and washed away the smell of alcohol on his body, the assistant was no longer there. He was the only one left in the huge apartment. It was already late, but he didn't feel sleepy at all. He stared at the bowl of hangover soup that his assistant had placed by his bedside for a while before putting on a coat and heading to the balcony. It was already deep into the night, and the entire neighborhood was eerily quiet. The sky was so dark that not a single star could be seen. Lu Benlei silently stared at the endless horizon for a long time before he finally retracted his gaze. He took out his phone and lowered his head. Unlocking the screen, he tapped into his phone's browser, and the first thing he saw was the official website of an internationally renowned jewelry brand. This was the page that he hadn't logged out of when he was done searching for rings in the afternoon. Every single ring in the page was expensive, and their designs were beautiful as well. He stared at the page for a long time, hesitating over which ring to give to her. But if he were to really buy it and give it to her, would she be willing to accept it? 2.5 years ago she made a bet with him. If it snowed on Christmas she would consider him. But it was a pity that the heavens weren't on their side that day. He created a fake snow in exchange for her consideration. 1.5 years ago on Christmas Day he made another bet with her. It was on the roadside of Chang'an Street. He looked at the cars that sped past in the middle of the night and told her that within half an hour, if the number of the cars was an even number, she would grant him one wish. If it was an odd number, he would grant her one wish. She agreed, and he won the bet. In truth, she was the one who won, but he had made preparations in advance. He had his assistant wait near Chang'an Street, and at the last moment, he managed to change the situation. The wish he raised was very simple. It was a wish that he had been looking forward to ever since the first time he saw her in G University, to be his girlfriend. He could tell that she was conflicted and hesitant that day, but in the end she still said, "I'll accept my loss." Just like that, the two of them became the most unlikely couple in the world. Over the past 1.5 years, even though they often saw each other and went on a date every weekend, they were like the most ordinary boyfriend and girlfriend. There was no interaction between them at all. Yes, even the most basic holding hands, hugging, and kissing were not done. At first he thought that she might have warmed up slowly. He didn't think too much about it because he really liked her and it wasn't because of these intimate things. But after a long time she was always so cold and indifferent, and he always felt bad. She was thinking about him because of the gamble. She agreed to be with him because of the gamble. Maybe in her heart she never had any thoughts of being with him. Not even a little bit. Otherwise, why would she still treat him like a stranger after so long? Liu Benlai, who had been in a daze for a very long time, was jolted back to reality by the vibration of the phone in his hand. He pursed his lips and glanced at the time. Seeing that it was already late, he returned to his bedroom. Oh. Chapter 947. After his bath, Lin Jiej climbed onto the bed very lightly. After his bath, Lin Jiej climbed onto the bed very lightly. It wasn't as if he had never returned late when he was busy, and he had seen her sleeping like this many times. But at that time, he would still naturally embrace her in his embrace. But today he instinctively wanted to hug her. Thinking about how she was pregnant, he was afraid that he might accidentally press down on her stomach. Even though he knew that he was making a big deal out of nothing, he still couldn't help but feel a little worried, so he eventually retracted his arms. Perhaps it was due to the alcohol he had drunk earlier, but he soon felt drowsy. Just as he was about to doze off, he heard Shi Yao's voice beside him. At first he thought that he was hallucinating or dreaming, so he didn't pay too much attention to it. But a moment later, Shi Yao spoke up once more. He subconsciously woke up and he turned around to look at Shi Yao. He thought that she had woken up, but to his surprise she was still in a deep sleep. Yet, the corners of her lips were still moving non-stop. Her voice was very soft, so he couldn't hear her clearly. Thus he moved closer to her, and it was only then that he heard what she was muttering. "Daddy? Mummy? Mummy? Daddy?" Was he dreaming? Was she dreaming of her parents? For the past 2 years, her parents hadn't contacted her at all, and she hadn't contacted her parents either. She seemed to be very happy every day. But wasn't she really that happy? In the depths of her heart, she still cared about her parents? Lin Jiej felt as if he had been stabbed in the chest by something, and a sharp pain suddenly jolted through his body. Indeed, he had been careless. He thought that as long as her parents stopped pestering her, she would be able to obtain something from Lin Jiej for them once and for all. But in the midst of all this, he had forgotten one thing. Soft Bun also needed kinship. She must have been afraid that he would worry, so she didn't show it in front of him. If he hadn't coincidentally heard her talking in her sleep tonight, would she have had to bear this sorrow and desire silently for the rest of her life? Perhaps it was because she had found out that she was pregnant. But the next day, Shi Yao woke up earlier than usual. Lin Jiej wasn't fully awake yet, so she didn't want to disturb him. Instead, she quietly got off the bed and went to wash up. Grandpa Lin, who had always doted on her, knew that she was pregnant, so it went without saying that he would cherish her more than anyone else. Thus, when Shi Yao walked out of her bedroom to drink some water, She saw that Auntie Sun and the chefs of the Lin family old mansion were already busy in the kitchen. With Auntie Sun around, there was no need for her to do anything. While she was waiting for breakfast, she couldn't help but recall the dream she had last night. She didn't know if it was because she was suddenly pregnant, but she actually dreamed of her father and mother last night. For the past 2 years, she had been asking Gu Nanqiang about her parents' situation. When she found out that her mother's health was not good, she secretly gave Gu Nanqiang money and asked him to bring it back so that Gu Nanqiang could subsidize their expenses. Chapter 948. Shi Yao didn't immerse herself in her dream for too long before Auntie Sun called her over for breakfast. Lin Jiej was already awake, and he was currently washing up. After breakfast, Lin Jiej sent her to school with the same cautious look on his face. Before getting out of the car, Lin Jiej nagged at Shi Yao with all sorts of things, but Shi Yao was getting annoyed by his nagging. Just as he was about to go on, she suddenly leaned forward and kissed him on the lips. Lin Jiej immediately fell silent. It was only then that Shi Yao's lips parted from his. She reached out to pinch his cheeks and said, "I'm going to work now. What about you? You should go to work too. Be a good boy." After saying those words, Shi Yao grabbed her bag, leaving the stunned Lin Jiej behind as she got out of the car and entered the school grounds. By the time she reached her office, she received a WeChat message from Lin Jiej. "Yao Yao, do you dislike me? Long? Page stinking of blood. Timid of machinery. Longing for bamboo to pluck Gung Badger model? Huaiwei doesn't care about the turtle. Yi Huaiwei lowly position zheng? Pinching?" Seeing this message, Shi Yao couldn't help but chuckle. Her eyes shone with a warm and blissful light. However, the words that she replied to Lin Jiej with her fingertips weren't as beautiful as before. "Nervous? You must have used the wrong word, right? I think you're just being paranoid." "Yes, it's paranoid. Paranoid. Paranoid." An aggrieved emoticon followed. "Paranoid. Paranoid." Shi Yao typed thrice consecutively, as if she was going to repeat something important thrice. "All right, you're crazy." A crying emoticon followed. Shi Yao imagined a cartoonish version of Lin Jiej sitting on the floor bawling his eyes out, and she couldn't help but burst into laughter. However, before she could reply to Lin Jiej's message, the bell for class rang. Putting down her phone, she grabbed her textbooks and headed to the classroom. It was only when Shi Yao left for lunch that she finally had the time to look at her phone. After she left, Lin Jiej had sent her many paranoid messages. In the end, perhaps due to her ignoring him, his messages turned into "I was wrong." Watching as Lin Jiej muttered to himself for the entire morning, Shi Yao couldn't help but chuckle. She picked up her phone and was just about to give Lin Jiej a call when she saw a familiar figure standing across the road at the entrance of the academy. She felt as if her acupoints had been poked, and she subconsciously stiffened on the spot. She stared at the figure for a long time. Before she could recover, the figure seemed to sense that someone was looking at him and turned to look at her. On the other side of the road, Shi Yao and the silhouette stared at one another quietly. Sometime later, a student walked past Shi Yao and called out, "Teacher Shi." Chapter 949. Mom. Perhaps it was due to pregnancy, but Shi Yao's emotional reaction was slightly stronger than that of ordinary people. When Shi Yao called out those words, her eyes reddened, and she nearly burst into tears. Mother Shi seemed to be at a loss as to what to do. Her eyes darted around frantically. There were several times when she wanted to look at Shi Yao, but she didn't dare to meet her eyes. Perhaps it was due to the fact that she had opened her mouth, but Shi Yao found it much easier to speak. "Mom, why are you here?" Mother Shi stuttered for a moment before she finally managed to squeeze out a complete sentence. "I came here to look for a job, but I didn't think that I'd meet you here." As she spoke, Mother Shi glanced at the school behind Shi Yao and asked, "Ao, are you working here now?" Shi Yao nodded and replied with an mem. Then she asked, "Mom, have you had lunch yet? If not, why don't we eat together?" Sure. Mother Shi nodded repeatedly. Shi Yao remembered what her mother liked to eat. She had wanted to eat something light, but in the end, she still brought her mother to a nearby Sichuan restaurant for boiled fish. It had been 2 years since they last met, so it was inevitable that the two of them would feel a little awkward. Fortunately, they managed to enjoy the meal peacefully. When it was time to settle the bill, Shi Yao couldn't help but ask Mother Shi, "Mom, my dad h." Before Shi Yao could finish her words, Mother Shi had already interjected. "Your dad is getting on in years, and his health hasn't been too good for the past 2 years. However, it's nothing serious," Shi Yao replied with an "oh," not knowing how she should continue the conversation. However, Mother Shi soon spoke up once more. "Yao, do you blame your dad and me? Yao, your dad and I have indeed let you down for what happened back then. We also..." Mother Shi seemed to want to say something, but just as the words were about to leave her mouth, she swallowed them back down. "Sai, forget it. It's all in the past, so let's not talk about it anymore. No matter what, your dad and I are the ones at fault. Yao Yao, if I have the time in the future, can I still come here to visit you?" Over the past 2 years, Shi Yao had dreamed of her mother or father coming to look for her, telling her that they wouldn't be like that anymore. She had always thought that this scene would only exist in her dreams forever. But who could have thought that it would actually come true today? In the end, Shi Yao still couldn't hold back her tears anymore, and tears began streaming down her cheeks. Seeing her cry, Mama Shi's eyes reddened as well. "Mom, don't cry." Shi Yao reached out to wipe away her mother's tears. Mama Shi raised her hand and wiped her face. Don't cry," she said that she wouldn't cry, but the tears in the corners of Mother Shi's eyes increased. Chapter 950. I don't have any other requests. I just hope that you won't reveal any flaws before her. Lin Jiej hung up the call without saying anything else. Instead of continuing with his work, he stared at the word Shi Yao's mother on his phone for a moment before putting down his phone and returning his attention back to his work. His fingers swiftly tapped on the keyboard, and the smooth tapping sound was exceptionally loud in the office. But not too long later, Lin Jiej's fingers suddenly stopped. Soft Bun said that she happened to meet her mother at the entrance of her school, and she said that it was fate. How could there be so many coincidences and fates in the world? Sometimes coincidences and fates were simply arranged by someone with ulterior motives. It was just like how a person's life was filled with unsatisfactory outcomes, and nothing could ever be perfect. However, he was willing to weave a perfect ending for her. On the day that Shi Yao learned of her pregnancy, Lin Jiej's first reaction was to tell his grandfather to hurry up with the wedding. He thought that it would take at least the summer break for the wedding to be held, but who could have thought that Grandpa Lin would be so efficient that it left Lin Jiej astonished. From the hotel to the wedding gown to the wedding dress, to the miscellaneous figurines and wedding candies, in just a few days Grandpa Lin had already given them several wedding plans. When Lin Jiej received those plans, he couldn't help but feel a chill run down his spine. For some reason, he felt as if he had fallen into some kind of trap. Grandpa Lin chose an auspicious date, and it wasn't out of superstition but purely for the sake of good fortune. Thus, the closest auspicious date was in June, so Shi Yao and Lin Jiej's wedding could only be held on the 21st of June. While Shi Yao didn't have to do much in the preparations for the wedding, she would still discuss everything with her. In Grandpa Lin's words, the bride was Yao Yao, so everything had to be done according to her preferences. As such, Auntie Sun consulted Shi Yao on everything from the decorations of the wedding venue to the design of the invitation cards before making a decision. However, there were 2 matters that required Shi Yao's personal attention. The first was to try on the wedding gown. Due to Shi Yao's pregnancy, Grandpa Lin had already regarded her as a precious person, but now she was even more precious than before. Thus, the gown had to be personally delivered to her house and tried on under Auntie Sun's care. The other matter was the wedding ring. One weekend, Lin Jiej accompanied Shi Yao to the jewelry store to try it on. Lin Jiej's appointment was made in the morning, and coincidentally, the afternoon was Shi Yao's prenatal checkup. As there were 2 things that they had to do in a day, Lin Jiej and Shi Yao intentionally left the house a little earlier that day. Chapter 951. Lin Jiej was waiting for Shi Yao's opinion on the new pair of rings, but after a long while, seeing no reaction from her, he couldn't help but glance at her before following her line of sight to the entrance of the store. After taking a quick glance at Qiniran, Lin Jiej lowered his head and asked Shi Yao, "Do you know the person who just came in?" Shi Yao was rendered speechless for a moment before replying. "Don't tell me that you don't know her, should I?" Lin Jiej asked nonchalantly. Shi Yao was rendered speechless once more. It was extremely quiet in the store. Even though their conversation wasn't loud, Qin Yiran still heard it. Shi Yao could clearly see Qin Yiran's expression turning a little awful. While Shi Yao did hate Qin Yiran to the core when they were still in university, it was already 2 years ago, and Shi Yao didn't want to dwell on the past. So, after Qin Yiran was a distance away from Lin Jiege and her, she quietly asked Lin Jiege, "Do you really not remember her? Or are you doing it on purpose?" "I really don't remember." Lin Jiege paused for a moment before asking, "She's from G University?" It seemed like Lin Jiege had really forgotten about her. Shi Yao replied curtly, "That's right, she's from G University. The girl you courted back then was the campus belle." Hearing those words, Lin Jiege suddenly recalled something. How should I put it? She looks a little familiar. So, she's that campus belle who likes to use her Smurf account to scold others on the forum. However, her appearance seems a little different from before. Her facial features look more exquisite, but at the same time, they also seem a little unnatural. She must have gone through a lot of surgery, right? However, Lin Jiege didn't think that Qin Yiran had much to do with him, so he focused on accompanying Shi Yao to pick out the rings. After choosing a pair of rings before settling the bill, Lin Jiege recalled that Shi Yao had taken a few extra glances at a set of accessories and a pink diamond during the selection process, so he had the salesperson take them out and help Shi Yao put them on. After that, Lin Jiege tossed a card over and calmly gestured for the salesperson to bring out the items that Shi Yao had tried on before paying the bill together with the other items. After paying the bill, Lin Jiege and Shi Yao were led to the lounge to wait for the salesperson to pack the accessories that they had picked out. Qin Yiran hadn't left the shop yet. From time to time she would choose a ring and try it on. After asking about the price, she would return the ring. It didn't take long before the two of them were escorted out of the store with the items they had bought. While they were leaving, Qin Yiran chose an inexpensive but beautiful ring, snapped a photo of it, and sent it to her current boyfriend. "I want to buy this ring." After waiting for a long time, there was no response. When she called, the other party's phone was already turned off. Seeing that Qin Yiran wasn't paying the bill or taking off her diamond ring, the salesperson politely asked, "Miss, what do you think of this ring?" Unwilling to give up, Qin Yiran dialed another number, but it was still switched off. Only then did she remove the phone from her ear and return the ring to Zhang Xian. "I don't really like it. Let me take a look at it again." After which, Qin Yiran pretended to stroll around the shop for a while before leaving. Chapter 952. To Shi Yao, the things that she had dreamed of her entire life could be easily obtained by her. But what about her? After graduation, the income from the job she found wasn't enough to make ends meet. Eventually she started playing around with various boyfriends, and eventually she got pregnant. She didn't even know who the father of the child was, but she was certain that it wasn't her current boyfriend's. Yet, she had no choice but to forcefully pass the child to her current boyfriend. There was no other reason other than that he was the richest man in the world. Of course, he wasn't willing to spend money on her either. Otherwise, he wouldn't have called her darling when he saw the photo of the diamond ring she had taken for him, and her phone wouldn't have been able to reach him no matter how hard she tried. In truth, she wasn't intending to enter this jewelry store today. It was a world-renowned brand, and every single item here cost at least 6 digits. It wasn't something that someone like her could afford, but when she saw him through the window, it had been a long time since they last met, but he still made her heart flutter. Over the years she had changed boyfriends after boyfriends, and she had long forgotten the feeling of her heart beating. Yet, Lin Jiege was able to bring her the same feeling she had many years ago in G University. When she walked past him in his military uniform, she caught a whiff of his pleasant scent and turned her head around. From then on, her eyes were filled with a myriad of emotions. Compared to the him in G University, the current him was less youthful, but he had a more mature, homey vibe about him. She thought that she had tried her best to make herself more beautiful over the past few years, and she had even done her hair and makeup today. Perhaps he might be interested in her. So when she stepped into the jewelry store, what she got in return was a "should I know him?" from him. After lunch, under Lin Jiege's careful care, Shi Yao arrived at the hospital. After a long checkup, Lin Jiej noticed that there were quite a few men who were carefully walking along the corridors with one hand on the waist of a pregnant woman and the other on the arm of a pregnant woman. So he imitated them and helped Shi Yao up. As a result, in the doctor's office, Shi Yao, who had been bombarded with questions like, how is the child, how is she, how is her blood pressure, how should I take care of her, finally pushed him away. However, Lin Jiej didn't get angry at all. After regaining his footing like a little puppy, he leaned forward and said, Yao, I'm just practicing in advance. One day your stomach will. Shi Yao didn't even need to think to know that Lin Jiej was going to spew out a long string of fallacious arguments. She subconsciously spoke up to shut Lin Jiej up, but before she could say anything, the shrill scream of a woman suddenly sounded from the front. I don't want to, I just don't want to. The voice sounded a little familiar, but Shi Yao couldn't recall who it was. It wasn't that she and Lin Jiej were having a good time, but as they were leaving the hospital, they had to pass by the source of the sound. In truth, there were already quite a few people gathered around the area. But as Shi Yao and Lin Jiej walked closer, they were still able to get a clear view of the scene. A middle-aged man angrily dragged a woman towards the obstetrics and gynecology department. You have to have it even if you don't want it. You're taking my money to feed the bastard in your stomach. Dream on. I'm telling you, you have to abort this child for me. Otherwise, I'll lose face. Chapter 953. Shi Yao recognized the man. He was the father of her student Zhang Xiao. As for the woman, Shi Yao also recognized her. She was Qin Iran, whom she had met at the jewelry store earlier that morning. If you don't abort the child and I break up with you just like that, everyone will say that I'm cold-blooded and irresponsible. But if you want me to become a father, you'll have to get pregnant with my child first. Do you think that I'll fall for your lies just because you're trying to fool me? Let me tell you this. I've been investigating you in secret. If you don't want others to find out about it, don't do it. In any case, you have to abort this child even if you don't want to, because it's my humiliation. How much money have you wasted on me ever since I got pregnant? The more the man spoke, the more furious he became. In fact, he even mercilessly slapped Qin Iran across the face. Qin Iran burst into tears, and as she cried, she stubbornly said, "This child is yours. I don't want to abort it." The man's face reddened at her words, and he quickly made a move. The two of them got into a scuffle, and the scene was incredibly awkward. Being in a hospital, there were many people around and there were patients as well. It didn't take long for the two of them to be pulled apart. Perhaps the man also felt that it was too embarrassing to make such a scene in front of so many people, so he angrily pointed at Qin Iran and said, "Just you wait." Then he walked away without looking back. Qin Iran clutched her swollen face as she squatted on the floor and sobbed softly. After calming herself down, she quickly stood up and prepared to leave. However, as soon as she stood up, she saw Shi Yao and Lin Jiej standing right in front of her. Around Shi Yao's neck was the necklace that Lin Jiej had bought for her at a high price in the jewelry store. Behind her was the OBGYN department, and Lin Jiej was standing by the side with the posture of a knight. So, not only were Shi Yao and Lin Jiej going to get married, they were even pregnant? In that short instant, many thoughts flashed across Qin Iran's mind. But in that instant, Lin Jiej acted as if she didn't exist at all. Switching positions, he placed himself between her and Shi Yao, wrapped his arm around Shi Yao, and led her away. As soon as they stepped into the elevator, Qin Iran turned her gaze in the direction they had left in. When she was trying to curry favor with Zhang Xiao would address her as teacher Shi Yao. Shi Yao must have been the one who instigated Zhang Xiao to say that the child in her womb wasn't Zhang Xiao's father's. That was why Zhang Xiao would tell her father that the child in her womb wasn't her biological brother or sister. This was the reason why her father had to investigate her, only to find out that she was involved with quite a few men when she was with him. He even learned that the date of her pregnancy wasn't what she had told him at all. That's it, that must be it. With such thoughts in mind, Qin Iran rushed in the direction that Lin Jiej and Shi Yao had left in. Shi Yao and Lin Jiej walked very slowly, so it didn't take her long to catch up to them. Perhaps there were no more parking spaces in the hospital, so they parked their car outside and walked directly to the entrance of the hospital. Qin Iran whipped out her car keys, quickly got into her car, and drove to the entrance of the hospital first. Through the car window, she stared at the entrance of the hospital for a moment before seeing Lin Jiej and Shi Yao walking out. It was hard to tell what they were talking about, but Shi Yao suddenly smiled. Her eyes were brimming with happiness. Seeing her smile, the corners of Lin Jiej's lips curled up as well. This was the first time she had seen him smile. So, he could actually smile, and he looked so good when he smiled. But he only smiled at her. Looking at this sight, Qin Yiran felt her blood churning, and her chest heaved up and down violently. She didn't know what was wrong with her, and she didn't know what she was doing either. All she knew was that the sight of them together was an eyesore, so much so that it drove her insane. As she stared at them, her body began to tremble. In the end, there was only one thought left in her mind, and that was to destroy. She wanted to destroy his smile. She didn't want him to smile with such thoughts in mind. Qin Yiran abruptly stepped on the accelerator and charged right at them. Chapter 954. On the way out of the hospital, Shi Yao asked Lin Jiej, "Do you like a boy or a girl? As long as it's your child, I like it." Lin Jiej didn't have any requirements for whether it was a boy or a girl. After replying to Shi Yao, he asked, "What about you? Do you like a boy or a girl?" Shi Yao tilted her head to the side and pondered for a moment before answering Lin Jiej's question seriously. "I'm the same as you. I like both boys and girls, but I hope that it's a boy because a girl is too dangerous." Lin Jiej didn't understand what Shi Yao was getting at. "Look, you're so handsome and I'm so beautiful. The child we give birth to will surely be very good-looking. A beautiful little princess like that will surely be loved by everyone. Think about it, if everyone likes her, it means that everyone will covet her. How dangerous would that be?" What Shi Yao said made sense, but he preferred girls, especially those who looked more like her. However, that was all Lin Jiej dared to say. In truth, he wanted to echo Shi Yao's sentiments, but before he could say a word, he suddenly saw a car heading straight for him and Shi Yao. The car was moving at a high speed, so he didn't have much time to think. He quickly scanned his surroundings before pushing Shi Yao into the embrace of a man who happened to be passing by them. Only by having Shi Yao bump into someone would she be able to avoid falling to the ground, and thus she wouldn't be in danger. With such thoughts in mind, Lin Jiej suddenly felt a powerful force crashing into his body. After being abruptly pushed away by Lin Jiej, Shi Yao was stunned for a moment before she finally uttered a thank you. After which, she turned around angrily and glared at the person behind her. She wanted to lash out at Lin Jiej, but she didn't think that she would witness a scene that she would never forget for the rest of her life. Lin Jiej being sent flying by a car. Shi Yao couldn't remember what happened after that. She stared blankly at Lin Jiej, who was lying on the ground, for a long while. It was only when the people in the surroundings had gathered around to look at him that she finally walked over to him. She squatted by Lin Jiej's side and stared at him blankly. She didn't know what she should do at all. In the end, it was a kind soul who rushed over to the emergency department to inform them of the matter. The car that had knocked down Lin Jiej was stopped by the hospital's security. The security guards knocked on the car door for a very long time, but no one opened the door. It was only when the police arrived that the car door finally opened. Qin Yiran's terrified screams echoed from within. "I knocked into someone. I knocked into someone. I killed someone. I killed someone. I didn't want to do that. I don't know why I did it. I don't know. I don't know anything." It didn't take long for the doctors from the hospital to arrive, and Lin Jiej was taken away. As if a puppet, Shi Yao followed Lin Jiej stiffly. Just as she was about to enter the emergency ward, another piercing scream sounded behind her. Turning around, she saw Qin Yiran clutching her stomach and squatting on the ground. Someone was pointing at her skirt and shouting, she's bleeding," following which Shi Yao's vision darkened and she fainted too. When she woke up again, she was already in a ward in the hospital. The room was very quiet, and there was only one lamp that was suitable for sleeping. Chapter 955. Lin Jai and Lin Gunan were in the ward, and upon seeing Shi Yao wake up, they immediately rushed over. "Yao Yao, how are you feeling? Do you feel any discomfort? Do you need a doctor to take a look?" Shi Yao didn't respond to Lin Gunan and Lin Jai's words. Instead, she turned to look out the window. It was already dark outside. So she abruptly tore off the blanket and got off the bed. As she did so, she asked, "Where's Lin Jiej?" Lin Gunan and Lin Jai didn't say a word. Shi Yao's heart skipped a beat as she asked anxiously, "Where's Lin Jiej? Where is he? How is he doing?" In the end, the one who told Shi Yao about the situation was Zhang Wangui. She told everyone to leave so that she could talk to Shi Yao alone. Lin Jiej's first operation was a success, but one of his ribs had been fractured, and it was lodged in his chest. It was relatively close to his lungs, but it had to be removed. While the operation wasn't too difficult, it was very risky. By risky, it meant that there was a high chance that Lin Jiej wouldn't be able to walk off the operating table during the second operation. After hearing about Lin Jiej's condition, Shi Yao felt even calmer. Instead of saying anything, she asked Zhang Wangui, "May I take a look at Lin Jiej now?" Zhang Wangui nodded and said, "Give me a moment." Then he walked out of the ward. Not too long later, the doctor rushed over and helped Shi Yao put on a disinfectant suit and shoe covers before bringing her into Lin Jiej's ward. Lin Jiej was in a conscious state. When the doctor brought Shi Yao in, he was holding a pen in his hand, and he was writing something on a notebook. His every movement seemed to be laborious. It was only when Shi Yao got very close that Lin Jiej noticed her presence. He glanced at her, and his first reaction was to hurriedly close the notebook and hide it under his pillow before turning his gaze back to Shi Yao. He didn't say a word, but there was a glint in his eyes that didn't match his usual personality. He doted on her and treated her well, but it was rare for him to look at her with such a gaze before entering the ward. Shi Yao had told herself not to cry, but Lin Jiej's gaze made her nose sting up. She couldn't help but blink her eyes, and tears began flowing down her cheeks. Shi Yao didn't stay in the ward for too long. Lin Gubei was currently signing autographs in the doctor's ward. Shi Yao stood at the entrance for a moment before she bade farewell to Lin Jai, saying that she needed to use the washroom for a moment, and left by herself. She did not go to the washroom but left the hospital. She looked left and right and saw a 24-hour pharmacy on the right side of the road. She crossed the bridge and walked over. She bought a bottle of medicine from a pharmacy, and shortly after she came out, she received a call from Lin Jai. She lied and said that she was hungry, so she went out to buy some food and would be back soon. After hanging up the call, Shi Yao lowered her head to look at the medicine she had bought. Then she gripped the bottle tightly, as if nothing had happened at all, and returned to the hospital. Ever since she was young, Shi Yao's language grades had always been the best in her class. When she was in the first grade, she could already recite many idioms, such as beautiful scenery on a beautiful day, beautiful flowers and full moon, a match made in heaven, warm spring blossoms, unparalleled in the world, carefree love, and so on. However, while she could recite many idioms, there were some that she didn't really like, such as a narrow escape from death, a false alarm. She was still young back then, so she didn't know what she disliked about them. Chapter 956. Lin Jiej's second surgery lasted for more than 4 hours. During those 4 hours, Shi Yao wanted the door to the operating theater to suddenly open, but at the same time she feared that it would. The only thing that kept Shi Yao afloat was the bottle of medicine that she had bought for her. She gripped the bottle tightly in her pocket, and her palms were covered in layers of sweat. Fortunately, it was just a scare, and the surgery was a success. Lin Jiej was still asleep. Even though it was already very late, Shi Yao still went to take a look at him before returning home to rest. The next day she wanted to visit Lin Jiej early in the morning, but despite her efforts, Lin Jiej was already awake by the time she arrived. In the end, Lin Jiej was still a little weak, so he simply called her Yao before falling silent and extending his hand to her. When Shi Yao grabbed Lin Jiej's hand, her eyes couldn't help but redden once more. A week later, Shi Yao finally allowed anyone to visit Lin Jiej. The Tian and Desolate Year came in the morning, and not too long after they arrived, Liang Jusi and Zhang Yu arrived as well. Liang Jusi and Lin Jiej had grown up together, and they shared a close relationship. When he saw the bandages wrapped around Lin Jiej's body, he couldn't help but write on the bandages with a brush, writing for the 9x9 table. Lin Jiej really wanted to hammer this fellow to death, but he was unable to move at the moment, so he could only watch as Liang Jusi scribbled on the bandages. After Liang Jusi was done, He wasn't willing to give up. He insisted on giving Jiang Yu the same mark as him. Of course, Jiang Yu wasn't as daring as Liang Jusi. She only wrote a Yu character, followed by Desolate Year and He Tian Tian. Desolate Year was written first, and He Tian Tian was written last. Both of them had written their own names, but He Tian Tian had written a heart behind her name. Her name was written side by side with Desolate Years, and at first glance it looked like He Tian Tian Heart Lin Wei. In any case, the doctor had already said that Lin Jiej would have to recuperate for at least 2 months. Liang Jusi knew that even if Lin Jiej were to beat him to death, it would still be 2 months later. So, he went all out and got Yao to write a memento as well. Lin Jiej shouted at Liang Jusi to scram. After Liang Jusi finished shaking his hips, he shook his head and said, I won't, come hit me if you can. Lin Jiej was so angry that he couldn't even be bothered to look at Liang Jusi anymore. Seeing Lin Jiej's reaction, Yao couldn't help but chuckle softly. She took the brush from Liang Jusi's hands and walked over. Seeing that Yao was actually colluding with them instead of stopping them, Lin Jiej's head drooped deeply. Looking at Lin Jiej's despondent look, the smile on Yao's lips deepened. She found a spot on Lin Jiej's left chest and unhurriedly wrote 2 words on it. Hubby. The lifeless Lin Jiej a moment ago suddenly leaped up gleefully upon seeing those 2 words. Pointing to his chest, he gestured to everyone in the room to take a look and said, Do you see that? This is written by Yao Yao. Isn't our Yao Yao's handwriting beautiful? Even when the nurse came over to help Lin Jiej change his dressing, he didn't forget to point to the 2 words on his chest to show off. This is written by Yao. Do you know who Yao Yao is? She's my fiancée. Do you know who Yao Yao is in this room? The one who's the prettiest. When the distance between the 2 of them narrowed significantly, she reached out to hold his hand. Before she could even touch his hand, her fingertips had already begun to tremble uncontrollably. She tried to convince herself. She gathered her courage again and again, but every time she almost touched his fingertips, she would shrink back. Oh. Chapter 958. That afternoon, the atmosphere between Lung Wan and Lu Binlai remained amicable. Before they left the Forbidden City, Lu Binlai patiently accompanied Lung Wan as they shopped around the shops in the Forbidden City to pick out some accessories. There was no parking in the vicinity of Chang'an Street, so Lu Binlai and Lung Wan had to walk for roughly half an hour before they reached the parking lot. It was already dinner time, so when Lu Binlai opened the car door for Lung Wan, he asked casually, Shall we go for Hunan cuisine? Sure. That was Lung Wan's favorite flavor. Back then, Lung Wan and Lu Binlai were still fine. Even when they went to the restaurant they frequented, Lu Binlai only ordered Lung Wan's favorite dishes. Even after the waiter left, Lu Binlai still acted like a competent boyfriend, helping Lung Wan remove the disposable chopsticks and the wet paper towels. Everything was still fine. By the time they were done with their meal, it was already around 8 in the evening. Lung Wan was indeed a little tired after strolling around the Forbidden City for the entire afternoon. After settling the bill, Lu Binlai asked her where she wanted to go, and she replied, I want to go home. Lu Binlai replied with a all right. When they reached the first floor of the restaurant, he had Lung Wan wait for him for a moment before heading to the washroom. There were people entering and leaving the restaurant one after another. Lung Wan didn't pay much attention to her surroundings. She was browsing through her unread messages on her phone, and it was only when she felt that it was about time that she raised her head to look in the direction of the washroom. Seeing that Lu Binlai hadn't come out yet, she retracted her gaze and turned back to her phone. However, just as she was about to leap past the entrance of the restaurant, she caught sight of a familiar figure. Her fingers trembled, and the phone fell to the ground with a thud. It was as if she had just received a huge fright. Her mind was at a complete loss, and she panicked until Lu Binlai's voice sounded behind her. Nguyen Nguyen? Noticing Lung Wan's ghastly pale face, Lu Binlai's expression also turned grim. What's wrong? It was only then that Lung Wan raised her head to look at Lu Binlai. After a moment of composure, she shook her head and said, Nothing. Then why do you look so pale? Also, why did your phone fall to the ground? Lu Binlai asked as he bent down to pick up Lung Wan's phone. The screen shattered. Seeing that Lung Wan's complexion was still a little awful, Lu Benlai thought that she was feeling distressed over her phone, so he said, "It's fine, it's not too late anyway. Let's take a detour to a phone shop on the way home and pick a new one." Lung Wan didn't understand what Lu Benlai was saying at all, so she simply nodded her head. Seeing that he was walking toward the door, she followed suit. Just as she was about to step out of the restaurant, she suddenly recalled the familiar figure who had just disappeared from the restaurant, and she halted her footsteps. Through the glass door, she stared fearfully at the figure outside for quite some time. It wasn't until Lu Benlai walked out of the restaurant that he noticed that she wasn't coming out, that he turned to look at her and asked, "Nuanyuan, why aren't you coming out?" Only then did Lung Wan raise her feet and walk out of the dining hall. By the time she reached the entrance, she realized that the familiar figure was long gone, and she heaved a sigh of relief. In the end, instead of buying a new phone, Lung Wan returned home. She maintained a calm demeanor as she bade farewell to Lu Benlai at the entrance of the rented apartment. A second after Lu Benlai stepped into the elevator, she closed the door and picked up her phone to check the calendar. Chapter 959. So, the person she saw at the entrance of the restaurant was just a figment of her imagination? That's right. It must be. My eyes must be playing tricks on me. Leaning against the door, Lung Wan held onto the phone with a shattered screen in one hand and stroked her wildly beating heart with the other, consoling herself inwardly. After sending Lung Wan home, Lu Benlai didn't rush home. Instead, he drove back to his office. In truth, he still had some matters to attend to today. He had to meet with an important client tomorrow morning, and he still hadn't finished preparing all the documents he needed. On the way to his office, Lu Benlai passed by a traffic light, and through the car window he saw a shopping mall by the roadside. The most eye-catching location on the first floor was an international jewelry store, and the advertisement board was filled with a promotional photo of a popular actress wearing a dazzling diamond jewelry. Lu Benlai stared at the glittering diamond ring on the actress's finger for a moment, and after a moment of hesitation, he still turned the car around and drove to the mall's underground parking lot. He admitted that the business trip was one of the reasons, but the other reason was to calm himself down and think about the problem between him and Lung Wan. But after leaving Beijing, he couldn't help but think about Lung Wan every single day. In fact, he even talked about her when he was drinking with his clients. He thought that he would probably fall into the hands of this woman called Lung Wan in this lifetime, just like this afternoon, when she easily convinced him to skip work to accompany her to the Forbidden City with a few words. She was knowledgeable, and when she told him some historical stories he felt comfortable listening to them, and for some reason he liked that feeling. It was then that he realized that he probably couldn't leave her. Since he couldn't leave her, he might as well not leave her. Lu Benlai had wanted to take the postgraduate entrance examination and study abroad, but because of Lung Wan, he eventually gave up on his original plans. Just like his boss, he went out to do his own thing. With a great idea in hand, he won the investment of a large company, and his business was doing very well. He bought a house and a car in Beijing, and he could even afford a huge diamond ring for her now. He had envisioned himself living his life, but for the past 2 years he had been living his life for her. He didn't want her to wander around under the pressure of life after graduation. He wanted her to have a sense of security in such a huge city. Unknowingly, she had already infiltrated so deeply into his life that he had no choice, nor did he want to choose. When Lu Benlai walked out of the shopping mall with the wrapped diamond ring in his hand, he was in an inexplicably good mood. He couldn't help but hum along to the song Young and Promising on his car's music system. If I were young and successful, I wouldn't feel inferior. Lu Benlai thought that it was fortunate that he was young and successful. Otherwise, in a society where money was needed everywhere, he might not even have the ability to maintain a relationship. Upon arriving at the company, Lu Benlai took the elevator up to his office and brewed himself a cup of coffee. He first sent a message to Lung Wan asking if she was asleep, and after chatting for a while he switched on his laptop. By the time Lu Benlai was done with his work, it was already around 11:30 at night. He rubbed his neck, which was a little sore from working for a long time, before he stood up and left the office. Chapter 960. Ling Wan. Hearing such a familiar name, Lu Benlai instinctively turned around to look at the source of the voice. It was a man squatting in the darkness. Upon noticing Lu Benlai's gaze, he stood up and walked out from the darkness. The clothes he was wearing were of a style from many years ago, and his bald head made him look like a prisoner who had just been released from prison. From the start to the end, Lu Benlai didn't say a word. It was only when the man walked up to him that he finally spoke with a gentle voice. "May I know who you are? Who I am isn't important. The reason why I stopped you is because I want to see who it is that bought a second-hand good." Second-hand good? Such insulting words immediately caused a frown of displeasure to appear on Lu Benlai's forehead. "Mister, please be more respectful with your words." "Respect? Is that slut Lung Wan the only one worthy of my respect?" The man's words were getting more and more overboard. Unable to hold himself back any longer, Lu Benlai raised his fist and punched the man's mouth. The man who was punched didn't get angry, and he didn't retaliate either. Instead, he raised his hand to wipe away the blood at the corner of his lips before spitting on the ground. "There's no meaning in you beating me up, and there's no meaning even if you beat me to death. In any case, it won't change the fact that you picked up a broken shoe. I've been tailing you for quite some time this afternoon, and it seems like you treat her quite well. Did you go to the mall to buy a ring for her? That brand seems to be quite expensive. It looks like you'll be a promising young man. There are so many good ladies out there, but you chose a broken shoe? I'm telling you one more time, you'd better watch your words." As Lu Benlai spoke, he raised his fist toward the man before him once more. After receiving the punch, the man subconsciously dodged backward, avoiding Lu Benlai's kick. "Is there any meaning in being so anxious? I saw that the two of you weren't intimate at all when you were strolling around the Forbidden City. Could it be that you and that slut Ling Wan are just in a relationship and nothing has happened? But I'm still quite curious. If you had sex and knew that you weren't her first man, would you still treat her so well? Don't glare at me as if you want to kill me. It's useless. Even if you glare at me, you won't be able to change the outcome. Let me tell you, I am Lung Wan's first man. When I slept with her, she wasn't even an adult yet. If you don't believe me, you can take a look at the scar on her inner thigh and the mole on her abdomen, right here." As the man spoke, he pointed to the right side of his lower abdomen. "Do you think that just because your beloved girlfriend looks clean, she's very pure? Let me tell you, you're wrong, and it's a big mistake. She doesn't let you touch her because she doesn't care about you. When she was underage, she didn't stop me from touching her. Get lost. Get lost." Like an enraged lion, Lu Benlai charged toward the man spouting nonsense with bared fangs and brandished claws. The man seemed to be truly frightened by Lu Benlai's actions. He subconsciously took a few steps back before muttering under his breath, "Fine, I'll get lost then." After taking 2 steps back, he turned around and chuckled at Lu Benlai. "Hey, don't forget what I said earlier. Whether I'm telling the truth or not, you'll know once you take a look yourself." One on her abdomen, and the other on her inner thigh. Lu Benlai looked as if he was going to chase after the man and chop him into pieces. She was afraid of all men, including her father. There was even a time when she was afraid of girls. The vibration from her phone pulled Lung Wan back to her memories. She took a look and saw that it was a call from Lu Benlai. She swallowed several mouthfuls of saliva before answering the call. Perhaps it was because she had completely recalled the nightmare, but she felt inexplicably guilty. Are you done?" Hearing that Lu Benlai's voice sounded normal, Lung Wan heaved a sigh of relief. "Aren't you sleepy? Why aren't you asleep yet?" Chapter 962. Why did you suddenly wake up? You didn't have a nightmare, did you? Did you really have a nightmare? Lu Benlai's tone was clearly filled with concern. "I just finished work, so I bought some supper. I'll come over to see you," Lung Wan replied. "All right." After hanging up the phone, Lung Wan fell into another whirlpool. Initially, she had never thought of telling Lu Benlai about her past, because the thought of spending the rest of her life with him had never crossed her mind. Later on, when she fell in love with him, she didn't dare to tell him anymore. She was afraid that he would abandon her. She knew that this was the result of the inferiority complex that had seeped deep into her bones over the years. It didn't take long for Lu Binlai to arrive. He brought her supper from her favorite restaurant. While they were eating, Lung Wan looked at Lu Binlai several times. Once or twice she even called out his name, but she still didn't dare to tell him about her past. On the third time when Lung Wan called out his name, Lu Binlai asked, "Wan Wan, do you have something to tell me?" Meeting Lu Binlai's gaze, Lung Wan immediately grew timid. "Nothing. I just wanted to say that I had a nightmare earlier and broke out in cold sweat. I'd like to take a shower first. You can continue eating." Alright." After Lung Wan entered the bathroom, Lu Binlai sat in the living room for a while longer before he suddenly stood up and walked out of Lung Wan's apartment. He opened the electricity box in the corridor and stared at the best switch inside for a moment before raising his hand to switch on the electricity in Lung Wan's apartment. Just as he had guessed, a scream soon sounded from Lung Wan's apartment. He returned to his room, closed the door, and groped his way into the bedroom. "Wan Wan, are you alright? Why did the electricity suddenly run out?" As Lung Wan spoke, she suddenly knocked into something, and a messy sound echoed in the air. Using this opportunity, Lu Binlai kicked open Lung Wan's door and turned on the flashlight on his phone before barging in. "Wan Wan, are you alright?" The naked Lung Wan shrank back in fear. She shook her head and said, "I'm fine." Then she hurriedly walked out of the shower and grabbed a towel to wrap around herself. Her reaction was fast, but Lu Binlai had come prepared. No matter how fast she was, he could still clearly see the mole on her waist and the long scar on her inner thigh. In the blink of an eye, it was already the day of Lin Jie's discharge, Shi Yao's graduation, and the day of Lin Jie and Shi Yao's wedding. On the morning of his discharge, Shi Yao was the one who helped Lin Jie pack his things. Lin Jie, who had always been a germaphobe, was finally able to touch water. After entering the bathroom, he didn't come out for an entire hour. During this hour, Shi Yao found a notebook on the bed. The notebook looked very familiar to Shi Yao. There was a pen inside, and out of pure curiosity, she flipped it open and saw a few lines of words. "Shi Yao, many days ago, I wanted to say something to you. But it wasn't until many days later that I was lucky enough to say those words. Time and you are both beautiful. Lin Jie." On the other page of the diary there was a will. It was written very clearly that his company, real estate, and all of his assets would be left to her. It was dated on the day of his surgery. Note: most of you should have guessed that Lung Wan's character was foreshadowed in the early stages. This character design originated from the news of many girls getting into trouble this year. I didn't write the character of Lung Wan so that the germaphobe would despise her or say that she wasn't worthy of Lu Binlai or anything like that. What I wanted to express was that those who had gone through such a nightmare would eventually meet someone who truly loved them, and that person would bring them out of that nightmare and allow them to start a beautiful life anew. Thus, Lung Wan and Lu Binlai are bound to be a comedy. I hope everyone can understand. Chapter 963. Shi Yao was taken aback for a moment before she slowly recalled that the first thing she'd asked about him after waking up was Zhang Wangui. After hearing everything from Zhang Wangui, she'd only said a single sentence, "I would like to meet him now. Is that all right?" She had said those words very calmly, and she had been feeling very calm back then as well. However, there was a hint of sobbing in her voice when she asked, "Can I meet him now?" Zhang Wangui agreed to her request, and she rushed to the intensive care unit. He was leaning against the headboard, struggling to write something on a notebook. When she got closer, before she could get a clear look at the content, he had already closed the notebook and hidden it under his pillow. She was overjoyed when he woke up, and she quickly threw the matter to the back of her mind. If not for the fact that she happened to stumble upon the notebook, she would have probably forgotten about this small interlude. It could be seen that he had written those words in a hurry that day. Perhaps it was due to his injuries, but his handwriting was extremely sloppy. In fact, some of the words at the end were even distorted, reminiscent of scribbles. But as Shi Yao stared at those 2 pages, she couldn't help but feel overjoyed, and at the same time she couldn't help but tear up. She knew that these were the words he had left for her when he thought that his life had come to an end. Yao Yao? Yao Yao? Lin Jie's voice sounded from the bathroom. Coming back to her senses, Shi Yao quickly wiped away the tears on her face and asked, "What's wrong? Where's my shirt? I don't think I brought it in." Shi Yao replied with an "oh" before placing the diary back in its original spot. Then she found the shirt he wanted on the sofa and brought it to the bathroom door. By the time Lin Jie came out, Shi Yao had already recovered, and there wasn't the slightest trace of injury on her face. Auntie Sun had already completed the discharge procedures, and Shi Yao had also packed up her belongings. Before leaving, Shi Yao intentionally asked, "Did you leave anything behind?" Hearing her words, Lin Jie seemed to have thought of something, and he anxiously walked over to the bed and lifted the pillow. When he saw that the diary was still there, his expression visibly relaxed. He picked it up and stuffed it into his bag before saying, "There's nothing else. Let's go." Shi Yao replied with an "mem" before heading out of the ward with Lin Jie. Along the way, Shi Yao asked despite knowing the answer, "Is there anything shameful in the diary you took out earlier? Seems to be very precious." "No. It's just some trivial things from work. I'm afraid I've forgotten." "Oh, I thought the diary contained some sort of suicide note or something like that." After saying those words, Shi Yao shot a glance at the man beside her. The man looked flustered, but he quickly calmed down. As he slowly held her hand and walked to the elevator, he replied disdainfully, "Are you kidding me? Do I look like the kind of person who would write a suicide note?" The third day after Lin Jie was discharged from the hospital was Shi Yao's graduation day. Early in the morning, Shi Yao rushed to school. As the representative of the graduating class, Shi Yao even stood on the rostrum and gave a 3-minute speech before the entire school. During her speech, many people took pictures with their phones, and there were also many people discussing below. "So that's Shi Yao. I've long heard that she's a beauty, but it turns out that it's true. It's no wonder why so many students are still pursuing her despite knowing that she has a boyfriend." Chapter 964. Bro, didn't you forget 2 words? It should be extremely shameless, ha ha ha, but it seems like there's nothing we can do about it now. I heard that Shi Yao's wedding is tomorrow. Not only so, I also heard that Shi Yao is pregnant. Someone saw her at the gynecology department, and her boyfriend accompanied her for a checkup. Are you for real? I couldn't tell that she's still so skinny. It's true. Furthermore, her boyfriend only managed to marry her because of her son's noble status. I've heard of a mother's noble status, but this is the first time I've heard of a father's noble status. Amidst the commotion, Shi Yao finally ended her speech. She bowed deeply to the teachers and students beneath the stage before walking down amidst the applause. The graduation ceremony was still going on, and it only ended around noon. After which, it was time to take a photo and exchange blessing cards with the students. It lasted all the way until 3 in the afternoon before it finally came to a stop. However, Shi Yao, Zhangyu Lengwan, and He Tiantian didn't leave just like that. Instead, they circled around Ji University once more. It was just like back when they first entered Ji University. Every day after their military training ended, the 4 of them would walk around the campus. 4 years ago, they had taken a group photo in the field, and in the photo they were dressed in their military training uniforms. 4 years later, they stood in the same spot on the field and posed in the same pose as 4 years ago. Pulling out the photo from 4 years ago, He Tiantian couldn't help but cover her face and wail in agony, "My God, was I really that black and ugly 4 years ago? No wonder people say that universities are plastic surgeries. Zhangyu, I feel like I'm taller than 4 years ago. Look, Tiantian used to reach my ears, but now she only reaches my shoulders." He Tiantian, "Zhangyu, will you die if you don't speak? Zhangyu, you have to learn to accept reality. But don't worry, it doesn't matter if I roast you or not. It's fine as long as I don't roast you during these desolate years." He Tiantian, "Zhangyu." Watching the 2 of them teasing each other, Shi Yao couldn't help but burst into laughter. After laughing for a while, she realized that Leng Wan seemed to be in low spirits. Shi Yao leaned closer to Leng Wan and asked, "What's wrong? Are you in a bad mood?" "No." Leng Wan's lips curled up. In order to conceal the disappointment in her heart, she continued, "I just thought of something. Why don't we all write a sentence behind this photo?" "Sure, sure." Jiang Yu ran over, took out a pen from her bag, and passed it to Lung Nuan. Nuan, you first. Lung Nuan didn't turn down his offer. She took the brush and placed the 4 photographs on top of a book. After pondering for a moment, she wrote 4 times behind the 4 photographs, I hope that every effort we put in will be rewarded. Lung Nuan. After Lung Nuan was done writing, He Tian volunteered. I'll do it. Then she twirled the brush for a moment before writing, I hope that all of our deep feelings can be exchanged for tenderness. He Tian. After He Tian was done writing, she passed the brush over to Jiang Yu. Jiang Yu contemplated for a moment with a frown before writing, I hope that we can have everything we want and let go of everything we can't have, Jiang Yu. Finally, it was Shi Yao's turn. She pondered for a few seconds before writing, I hope that all of you will marry love. He Tian. You only hope for us, but what about you? Jiang Yu. That's right. Chapter 965. He Tian. Jiang Yu. All right, they were the ones who asked too much earlier. Around 5 o'clock, the group parted ways. Lin Jiej took Shi Yao away, and He Tian and Jiang Yu went to watch a movie together. They even brought along Huang Nian and Liang Jusi. Lung Nuan stood at the entrance of Ji University, and after sending them off, she picked up her phone once more and gave Lu Binlai a call. Just like all the other calls she had made recently, no one picked up. Thinking about it, it had been almost a month. In this month, she would call Lu Binlai almost every day, but he didn't pick up. She also sent him messages, but he didn't reply either. It seemed like this had been happening ever since they finished touring the Forbidden City. Perhaps he had already decided to cut all ties with her on that day. His performance that day was too good, so good that she thought she was overthinking things. Seeing that no one was picking up, Lung Nuan lowered her phone from her ear. This was the 99th time she had called him this month. She wasn't sure if he could still remember the story she had told him. There was a couple who had a falling out, and the boy would come to the girl's apartment every night to coax her. For 99 consecutive days, the girl thought that as long as the boy came again tomorrow, she would be with him once more. On the 100th night, the boy came, but when the girl ran down the stairs, the boy told her that they should end things here. Lung Nuan stared at Lu Binlai's number for a very long time, but no matter how hard she tried, she couldn't make the call. She knew very well that the 99th time was to persuade him to stay, and the 100th time was to give up. She didn't want to give up, even though her woman's intuition was telling her that Lu Binlai might not want her anymore. Lung Nuan stood at the entrance of Ji University for a very long time before she finally walked over to the bus stop. She boarded a random bus and wandered aimlessly along the streets of Beijing. She didn't know how long she had been walking for, but she eventually got off the bus and continued walking along the street. It was only when she finally stopped that she realized that she had arrived at Lu Binlai's company. She tilted her head upward and counted floor after floor before finally stopping at the floor where Lu Binlai was. The lights were still on, so most likely, no one had gotten off work yet. Lung Nuan hesitated for a moment, but she still decided to step in. The receptionist recognized her, and upon seeing her, she immediately stood up and greeted her with her usual smile. Miss Lung. Before Lung Nuan could say anything, the receptionist continued, Are you here to look for Boss Lu? What a coincidence, Boss Lu is on a business trip and isn't in the office. After a pause, the receptionist asked again, Miss Lung, do you still want to take a look at the company? Lung Nuan shook her head and with a smile asked no. Lung Nuan. Lung. And Lung. And Lu didn't Chen Yang Lu accompanied by Shang and Mo and Lu under. Lu Shi and Lu he. Under Lu accompanied Ji Lu accompanied Lu he Lu Dong he got he and accompanied Mo. Chapter 966. It turned out that he wasn't on a business trip. It turned out that he was the one who had instructed the receptionist to speak those fluently. She was still debating whether she should make the 100th call or not, but he had already given up on her a long time ago. In truth, she already had a premonition, didn't she? She was the one who had been lying to herself, unwilling to face it, until she saw it with her own eyes. She had thought that he was the benefactor in her life, the one who could pull her out of the quagmire. In truth, she was just a little bit away from it. As long as he didn't give up on her just a little longer, she might really be able to walk out of it. But he still let go, causing her to fall even deeper into the quagmire. Lung Wan could clearly feel her eyes burning up. She raised her head and looked at the sky. She tried her best to curl up the corners of her lips, and then again deepening the smile on her face. There were many things that she didn't know whether he could still remember. The fire at the hot spring resort, the sound of him calling out her name, the artificial snowfall at Christmas, the silhouette of him sweeping the ground with a broom, the scene of him counting the cars on Chong and Street with her. Even though he was gambling with her that day, he didn't know that regardless of the number of cars, she still wanted to be his girlfriend. Also, even though she was afraid of men, she had been trying her best to get used to him for the past half a year. In fact, she had even thought of telling him about the past so that he could understand her better. At the same time, she wanted him to know that the girl he liked wasn't as perfect as he thought she was. That way, he would be able to make a decision on whether he wanted to be with her or not. But all of her efforts were in vain. She still ended up getting separated from him. Actually, this was a good thing, wasn't it? She no longer had to be on tenterhooks all the time. Whenever she thought of that terrifying nightmare at night, she would start to be afraid. She was afraid that he would abandon her if he knew the truth. Now, it could be considered a form of relief. She no longer needed to be on tenterhooks. She no longer needed to feel infinite guilt whenever she thought of how good he was to her. She no longer needed to feel inferior when she saw how outstanding he was. She had finally returned to the past where she didn't have to talk about love, hate, anger, and infatuation. He was such a good person, and she wasn't worthy of him. So this was good, really good. This was supposed to be a happy occasion, so why was she crying? What was there to cry about? Lung Wan sat by the roadside in a daze for a very long time. It was only when the number of cars in front of her gradually decreased that she stood up and hailed a cab to head home. Sitting at the back of the car, Lung Wan had been staring out the window the entire time. She used to think that Beijing's night view was very beautiful, but today, all the scenery in front of her eyes had lost its color. Lu Benlei's place wasn't too far away from her rented apartment, but she had to pass through Beijing's bar district to get there. When the car drove past the mix, she saw a familiar figure through the window. It was Lu Benlei. He seemed to be drunk, and he was standing by the roadside, vomiting furiously into the trash can. His secretary and chauffeur were nowhere to be found. They were not with him. Lung Wan subconsciously gestured for the driver to stop the car. But before she could reach Lu Benlei, the latter had already collapsed onto the street, unconscious. In the end, it was the driver who helped Lung Wan push Lu Benlei into the car. Chapter 967. Even though Lu Benlei was so drunk, Lung Wan was still a little afraid of him. Her entire body was trembling as she supported him into the bedroom. It was only when he was lying on the bed that her beating heart finally calmed down a little. With trembling fingers, she helped him take off his shoes before pulling the blanket over him. Subconsciously, she wanted to stand up and distance herself from him. But in his drunken state, he seemed to have sensed that someone was taking care of him. He suddenly raised his hand, accurately grabbed her wrist, and pulled her down onto his body. His aura instantly filled her entire body. She didn't hate his scent, but she was afraid of coming into contact with a man like this. She subconsciously tried to struggle free. He was drunk, so he wasn't very strong. In truth, she could have easily pushed him away and left. But after struggling for a moment, she suddenly stopped. Her heart was filled with resistance, and her body was trembling uncontrollably. But she tried her best to hold it in. She didn't know how long she had been lying on his shoulder. She thought that he had fallen asleep from his drunken stupor, but all of a sudden, he flipped over and pinned her beneath his body. This time, not only was her body trembling, even her eyelashes were trembling. The instinctive urge to push him away and escape grew stronger and stronger in her mind. She tried her best to suppress it, but when she felt his lips on hers, her teeth began to chatter out of fear. She subconsciously raised her hand, but just as she was about to push his chest, she suddenly retracted her strength. She closed her eyes, not daring to look at him. She could feel his lips on her neck, and her clothes were being stripped off, Her mind was filled with the terrifying images of that night. She bit down on her lower lip desperately to prevent herself from screaming or begging for mercy. She felt the brute force of him barging into her world, but she didn't feel any joy or happiness. Instead, she bit down even harder on her lower lip. In order to prevent herself from going berserk, she tried her best to hold on to the bedsheets. In the end, she tasted blood in her mouth. It was only when she knew that she had bitten through her lips that he finally released her. Perhaps it was because he was satisfied, he quickly fell asleep by the side. The moment the weight on Lung Nuan's body disappeared, she rolled onto the ground. She shivered on the cold floor for a long time before she picked up her clothes and hastily put them on. Then she ran out of his house. When she got back to her place, the first thing she did was to take a shower in the bathroom. When she came out, she didn't go back to bed. Instead, she opened the closet and began to pack her things. By the time she was done packing up, she picked up her phone to take a look at the time. It was already 3 in the morning. She tapped into her call history and stared at Liu Binlei's name for a moment before tapping on the dial button. On the 100th call, he still didn't pick up, but she knew that it didn't matter whether he picked up or not. For some people, no matter how long they walked with you, they still had to say goodbye and take care in the end. After dinner, before Lin Jiej and Shi Yao left the restaurant, Shi Yao made a trip to the washroom. Carrying Shi Yao's bag, Lin Jiej stood at the entrance of the washroom, waiting for her to return. He washed his hands, and when he saw that the toilet paper in the restaurant's washroom had run out, he opened Shi Yao's bag and began rummaging through it. However, before he could find anything, he saw a medicine bottle instead. Chapter 968. Medicine bottle? Softbun is pregnant, so why would she take medicine? Without much thought, Lin Jiej took out the medicine bottle from his bag. Lamine tablets were mainly used to treat headaches. It was one of the cheapest and most common medicines available, but taking too much of it could lead to death. If one were to gulp down this entire bottle of medicine, one would surely die if they weren't saved in time. Putting aside the fact that Shi Yao didn't suffer from headaches in the first place, it was impossible for her to consume such medicine due to her pregnancy. So, why would she carry such a bottle of medicine around with her? There was a thin plastic bag on the outside of the medicine bottle, and Lin Jiej saw a loan receipt inside. He took it out, and after seeing the date and time printed on the receipt, he understood everything. This medicine was bought last month. On the day of his surgery, he was pushed into the operating theater at 10:21 p.m. for his second surgery, and this medicine was bought at 10:45 p.m. When she visited him in the ward, she had always been fine. She even consoled him, telling him that he would be fine and that the surgery would be a success. She even said some vague words, such as saying that she believed in him and that he was blessed with great fortune, seeing that she was in a good state. He thought that his grandfather and the others had comforted her. It was only at this moment that he realized that she had already made up her mind before entering the ward to visit him. If anything were to happen to him, just as the doctor had said, and he was unable to get off the operating table, she would accompany him to the afterlife. He had already come to know the meaning of suicide for love since he was very young. Perhaps it was because he was a man that he was more interested in conquering the world, astronomy and physics, so even though he knew about it, he would only scoff in disdain when he saw stories about suicide for love. Those were nothing more than fictitious stories written in novels. There was no such beautiful thing as staying together in life and death, in reality. But now, the scene that he believed the most had happened to him. An indescribable feeling of gratitude welled up in Lin Jiej's heart. He thought that if the same danger were to befall Shi Yao one day, he would do the same too. After all, they had promised to be together through life and death. The door to the washroom suddenly opened, and Lin Jiej raised his head to take a look. It was Shi Yao. He hurriedly pretended not to see anything and stuffed the bottle back into his bag. When Shi Yao was done washing her hands, she walked over to Lin Jiej's side, and Lin Jiej naturally grabbed her hand. The car was parked in a parking lot roughly 500 meters away from the restaurant, and the two of them leisurely strolled along the roadside toward the parking lot. Even though Lin Jiej appeared to be calm on the surface, his heart was in turmoil because of that bottle of medicine, and it took a long time for him to calm down. He couldn't help but squeeze Shi Yao's hand as he asked, "Now, a month ago on the night of my surgery, were you scared?" "Afraid, extremely afraid." But Shi Yao shook her head and said, "There's nothing to be afraid of. I'm very calm. I'm so pretty, so even if something were to happen to you, I won't have to worry about finding a new boyfriend." Lin Jiej didn't expose Shi Yao's hypocrisy. Holding her hand, he continued walking forward. Chapter 969. Shi Yao's heart softened to the extreme. From the time Grandpa Lin came knocking on her door when she was 13, and he pointed at her and said, "Shi Yao, that's your fiancé Lin Jiej." To this day, they were walking hand in hand on the streets to welcome their wedding tomorrow. They had experienced many things together. While they weren't anything earth-shattering, every single one of them had made her laugh or cry, and they were all precious moments to each other. Rather than saying that their story had started when she was 13, it could be said that their story had started from the message she had sent him during the second semester of her freshman year. With such thoughts in mind, Shi Yao's eyes began to heat up. She tried her best to curl up the corners of her lips before turning to Lin Jiej and asking, "Lin Jiej, why don't we call off our engagement?" In the instant that she spoke, Lin Jiej, who was holding her hand, also turned to her and said, "Shi Yao, shall we annul our engagement?" "Sure." Hearing the other's voice, the two of them burst into laughter before saying in unison, "Let's get married." The wedding was a traditional Chinese wedding. Every single step of the ceremony was meticulously planned. Since it was the day before their wedding, Lin Jiej and Shi Yao couldn't stay together. Their original plan was to have Shi Yao stay at Lin Jiej's place. The next morning, Lin Jiej set off from the Lin family mansion to pick up his bride. However, this arrangement was vetoed by everyone in the Lin family, using Shi Yao's pregnancy as an excuse. Thus, Lin Jiej stayed at his apartment while Shi Yao stayed at the Lin family mansion. So, after dinner, Lin Jiej drove Shi Yao back to the Lin family mansion, but before he could even step through the door, he was chased away by his own grandfather, father, mother, aunt, father, and sister, using the excuse that the bride and groom shouldn't be together on the first night of their wedding. Lin Jiej stood at the entrance and looked at the house he had grown up in, looking at the bright lights and the double happiness characters on the windows. He stood there for a moment with a mixture of joy and worry in his heart before he got into the car and returned to his home alone. As Shi Yao was pregnant, she didn't have to attend to the wedding. It didn't take long for everyone to urge her to return to her room to rest. Returning to the bedroom that Lin Jiej had slept in since he was young, Shi Yao found herself lying on the bed, unable to fall asleep at all. How could she possibly fall asleep? Tomorrow was the day of her and Lin Jiej's wedding. No, to be more exact, there were still 2 hours and 7 minutes left until the day of their wedding. In the end, Shi Yao simply couldn't fall asleep, so she didn't force herself. She took out her phone and logged into the game that she hadn't played since she got pregnant. She didn't actually want to play the game. She just wanted to explore the game setting. In the end, not long after she was successfully matched, a notification appeared on her screen. 111,111 knocked out, don't hit super cute me with M416. 111,111. This name sounded so familiar. Wasn't he her boyfriend? Shi Yao was pleasantly surprised by this mysterious fate. She took a screenshot and sent it over to Lin Jiej's WeChat. Not too long later, Lin Jiej replied to her message. "Where are you?" Chapter 970. In the game, even if they weren't teammates, they could still hear the conversations of the people around them if they got too close. Upon hearing Lin Jiej's voice, Shi Yao immediately jumped down from the room where she was looking for equipment. She circled around the house and by the roadside, she saw Lin Jiej sitting on a motorcycle. Hugging her gun, Shi Yao ran over eagerly and asked, little brother, do you want to form a party?" Lin Jiej's light chuckle sounded from the other end of the earpiece. Following which, his voice sounded, "Get on." Shi Yao followed Lin Jiej's instructions and got on the motorcycle. Lin Jiej stepped on the accelerator and drove her along the map in the game. Eventually, he stopped in the vicinity of the airport. Shi Yao was just about to ask Lin Jiej what he was doing at the airport when Lin Jiej's voice sounded in her earpiece. Do you still remember this, Dugga? Shi Yao was taken aback for a moment, and she replied with a doubtful Back then, when a certain someone was parachuting, he hung on this Dugga and fell to his death after jumping off. Hearing Lin Jiej's voice, Shi Yao finally understood what Lin Jiej was trying to say. She couldn't help but pout as she continued. You still have the cheek to bring up that incident? Do you know that it was the first time I played this game? That night, I turned into many crates when I landed on the ground. Left with no other choice, I chose to play Squad 4, and I ended up falling to my death. Indignant, I begged you for help, but not only did you not save me, you even drove the motorcycle in the opposite direction. Hearing Shi Yao's complaint, Lin Jiej chuckled softly. If I had known that the girl who fell to her death was my wife, I would have rushed over to save her without her asking. Hearing Lin Jiej's words, Shi Yao couldn't help but chuckle. Her tone became much gentler. That was the first time we met in the game. Now that I think about it, it's been 3 years since then, but it still feels like yesterday. That's right. Lin Jiej replied. After which, the two of them fell silent. Half a minute later, Lin Jiej spoke up once more. Let's get on the motorcycle. Shi Yao obediently got into the car, and Lin Jiej drove her to another location. This time, before Lin Jiej could say anything, Shi Yao had already spoken up. I remember this place. It was here that our team was wiped out by justice from the heavens. Back then, expert said that my voice was pleasant to the ears, so he asked you if it was true. You said that it was just like that. An expert said that justice from the heavens would descend upon us if we didn't mean what we said. In the end, you still said that it was just like that, and you were blown to death. By the time Lin Jiej reached the third location, Shi Yao realized that Lin Jiej wasn't trying to form a party with her. Instead, he was bringing her along to relive the events that had happened in the game over the past few years. On a hill near Pochinki, Lin Jiej said, when you were shot dead by a sniper, and you were screaming about how you died, I was the one who jumped to your side to save you. I even tossed some medicine into your wound. In Rozhok, Shi Yao said, I remember that I was run over by someone as soon as I landed here. You chased that person across half of the map and killed him. After that, you ran over to my side and died as well. Tell me honestly, Lin Jiej, were you suicidal back then? Chapter 971. On the bridge next to the airport, Lin Jiej said, I'll teach you how to kill people here. We've left a lot of things on the ground, and when someone comes to pick them up, we'll shoot them. Lin Jiej drove Shi Yao around the map, and they found something that left a deep impression on them at every corner of the map. It was only at the very end, when the two of them were poisoned to death, that Shi Yao and Lin Jiej finally left the game. It was already late, so Shi Yao and Lin Jiej didn't continue playing anymore. After bidding each other good night, they lay down on their respective beds. In the Lin family's old residence, Shi Yao recalled the scene with Lin Jiej in the game, and she couldn't help but burst into laughter. Who could have thought that the Adonis she admired so much when she was young would end up becoming her husband? In the 21st floor apartment, Lin Jiej stared at the ceiling with his arms as a pillow, but he didn't feel the slightest bit sleepy. Who could have thought that Softbun, who was even worse than a robot in the game, would end up becoming his wife? Early the next morning, Shi Yao was woken up by someone before 5 o'clock. As bridesmaids, He Tian Tian Jiangyu and Lung Wan had already arrived at the Lin family's old residence. Under the accompaniment of the makeup artist and stylist, they helped Shi Yao change into her gown. By the time they were done, the sky was already bright. The sun hung high in the sky, illuminating the world. At 9:20 a.m., the deafening sound of firecrackers echoed from the entrance of the Lin family's old residence. Shi Yao knew that Lin Jiej had come to fetch her. Her head was covered with a red veil, so she couldn't see anything clearly. However, as she listened to the sound, she couldn't help but feel nervous. Even her palms, which were holding onto an apple, were covered in a layer of sweat. The commotion outside grew louder and louder. Chaotic footsteps could be heard rushing toward the room she was in. Even though the footsteps were chaotic, Shi Yao could still tell that the one walking with the steadiest footsteps was Lin Jiej's. However, before Lin Jiej could enter, he was stopped by the bridesmaids at the entrance. He Tian Tian and Jiang Yu had always been the best at causing trouble. Even though Shi Yao couldn't see the commotion from their conversation, she could tell that the groomsman Xia Shangzhou was forced to change into a pink lace muslin dress, Lu Benlai was forced to imitate a female voice and sing a song, and Liang Jusi was forced to eat 10 steamed buns before the bridesmaids finally relented. They stretched out their hands to ask Lin Jiej for a red packet. A thick stack of red packets flew out from Lin Jiej's hand and scattered all over the floor. While everyone was bending over to snatch the red packets, Lin Jiej had already rushed into the room and stood before Shi Yao. Lung Wan brought over a pair of wedding shoes, and Lin Jiej knelt down on one knee before Shi Yao to help her put on the shoes. After which, he stood up and carried Shi Yao in his arms. Amidst the commotion and screams, he walked out of the bedroom, down the stairs to the second floor, and out of the old manor to the bridal car. The car door opened, and Lin Jiej carefully placed Shi Yao inside before climbing into the car as well. At 11 o'clock, the bridal car arrived at the Beijing World Hotel punctually. In the largest suite on the top floor, Lin Jiej and Shi Yao served tea to Grandpa Lin and Lin Gu before collecting their red packets. After which, accompanied by her bridesmaids, Shi Yao went to change into her wedding dress and touch up her makeup. On the other hand, Lin Jiej and the groomsmen headed to the hotel's main entrance to welcome the guests who had just arrived. At 11:48, Shi Yao walked down the stairs accompanied by her bridesmaids. Chapter 972. Standing at the entrance of the wedding banquet hall, Shi Yao could hear the wedding march playing over and over again through the wooden door frame. There was still around 10 minutes before the auspicious hour, and the hosts were already starting to warm up the crowd. Less than half a minute after Shi Yao stood at the entrance of the wedding hall, she heard the female MC speak up. "Before the bride comes out, let's invite the groom up onto the stage." Inside, there were deafening cheers, screams, and a few whistles mixed in. Shi Yao couldn't see what was going on inside, but she had a feeling that Lin Jiej was already standing on the stage. Just as she had expected, the male MC spoke up. "While the bride isn't here, let us first interview the groom. Indeed, I have a few questions on hand, and they're all provided by our relatives and friends. Let me ask the first one." The female MC continued. "According to the groom's close friend, the groom has been courting the bride. No, the groom has been plucking peach blossoms the most. So, can I ask the groom if he still remembers how many peach blossoms he has plucked?" Who was the one who came up with this question? Liang Jusi didn't think it was possible. He wasn't from the same school as Lin Jiej, so he didn't know much about this matter. Song Chaoshi often stayed with his girlfriend off campus, so he probably didn't know much either. So, could it be Xia Shangzhou and Lu Benlai? That did sound more like their style. They didn't dare to do anything under normal circumstances, so they decided to take advantage of Lin Jiej's wedding. But Lin Jiej probably wouldn't be able to answer this question, right? Just as Shi Yao was deep in thought, Lin Jiej's usual cold voice sounded from within. 65 peach blossoms. The male MC exclaimed in agitation. "Wah, the groom sure remembers it well." However, 65 peach blossoms means that there have been 65 men courting the bride over the years. Looks like our bride today is going to be as beautiful as a fairy. However, I still have to ask the groom, of the 65 peach blossoms, who left the deepest impression on you? Lin Jiej. Must I answer it? The female MC, of course. It's a joyous occasion today, so we can't be careless. Lin Jiej. Alright, the peach blossom that left the deepest impression on me is Lin Jiej. The male MC, what? If I recall correctly, the groom's name is Lin Jiej, right? The female host. So groom, are you saying that when you get jealous, you'll even pinch yourself the peach blossom? Lin Jiej's voice was as calm as ever. That's not it. Yaya once had someone she liked when she was young, but I didn't know who it was. I was jealous for a very long time and I brooded over it for a very long time. It was only in the end that I realized that the peach blossom was me. Female host, wow, how romantic. I think anyone would hope that they would be the one to pinch the peach blossom in the end, right? The male host, romance is romance. Fortunately, the groom didn't use too much force when he pinched this peach blossom. If he had used too much force, he might have crippled himself. That wouldn't be fun. As the entire hall burst into laughter, The male host asked the second question. Groom, we all have a special title for the person we like, which is a nickname for short. May I ask what the groom calls the bride? Chapter 973. Lin Jiej's answer left everyone stunned. Roughly 10 seconds later, the male MC spoke up. Can the groom explain why he's calling the bride 21? Lin Jiej pondered for roughly 5 seconds before replying. The stroke of deeply in love is 21, and the stroke of bliss is 21. Shi Yao's stroke is also 21, so the meaning behind 21 is that Shi Yao is deeply in love and bliss. Standing behind Shi Yao, He Tiantian couldn't help but exclaim in agitation. Wah, I didn't expect Senior Lin to have such a flirtatious side to his aloof and virtuous bones. At the same time, the MC in the wedding hall also chimed in. The male MC, to tell you the truth, I've hosted at least 800 weddings, if not 1,000, and I'm definitely the only one who's as handsome and romantic as the groom. As the female MC spoke, Shi Yao suddenly recalled the summer break 2 years ago. She received a call from Sis Jai, and upon learning that Lin Jiej had lost his phone and wallet, she ran out to pick him up from the streets. He didn't have an identification card, so he had no choice but to stay in her room that night. That night, she had fallen asleep on the sofa, but she was woken up by him hugging her. She didn't open her eyes and continued to pretend to be asleep. He leaned over to her and whispered a lot of things into her ear. He said, "It's a pleasure to meet the girl I like." He even said 21, 21, 21. Back then she was still wondering if he had gone mad. Why did he keep calling her second aunt? It was only at this moment that she realized that he hadn't called her second aunt that night but 21. Deep love, bliss, and Shi Yao. As these thoughts flashed across Shi Yao's mind, memories of her past flooded her mind like a tidal wave. The scenes of the past flashed before her eyes frame by frame like a slow-motion playback of a movie. On her birthday, Qin Iran called a bunch of men to block the both of them. Without any hesitation, he pushed her out of the courtyard house and used his body to block the door. On Mother's Day, Liang Mumu completely fell out with her. While she didn't suffer any grievances, she still felt a little sad. After parting with Jiang Yu, he was the one who called her. He didn't say anything, but he carefully accompanied her. He even called Lu Benlai, Xia Shangzhou, and Sis Jai over to sing a song so as to cheer her up. As these scenes of the past flashed before Shi Yao's eyes, she heard the MC speaking once more. This is the final segment. If everyone here is satisfied with the groom's answers, we'll be welcoming the bride onto the stage. The male host cooperated and continued. The last question is, would the groom please give a speech? When he confessed to her that he liked her, she asked him if he was serious. He said yes, he was serious about liking you in Chengdu. When she had a stomachache in the middle of the night, it was him who carried her to the hospital without even putting on his shoes. While Shi Yao was still reminiscing about the past, Lin Jiej suddenly raised the microphone and spoke up. His voice carried a rare seriousness and sincerity. I've only dreamed of 2 things in my life. One is Shi Yao and the other is Shi Yao's time. Many days ago I've always wanted to say something to Shi Yao, but it was only many days later that I was finally able to say it. Chapter 974. As soon as Lin Jiej said those words, deafening screams and cheers echoed in the wedding hall. The MC was an experienced host and he timed it well. By the time Lin Jiej was done answering the questions, it was already the auspicious hour. The music of the wedding march suddenly grew louder, and the door in front of Shi Yao was pushed open by an attendant. Accompanied by her bridesmaids, she slowly walked into the wedding hall. On the small stage in the middle of the flower-decorated red carpet stood her groom, Lin Jiej. The guests around him had joyous smiles on their faces. Under the witness of all her relatives and friends, Shi Yao stared fixedly at the man in front of her as she slowly walked toward him. With every step she took, a scene from the past would appear in Shi Yao's mind. Back then they stood at the peak of Mountain Changming. Gazing at the beautiful sunset back then, she chattered endlessly in the game, saying that she was Yang Guo and he was Xiao Longnu. After eavesdropping on her for a long time, he suddenly called her hubby. At the KTV, She and Lung Wan were bullied by Liang Mumu's friends, and he was the one who rushed over to save her. That day, he even told her that he was her 110. In the quiet night on the street of snacks beside Ji University, he called out to her, apologizing to her and asking her to reintroduce herself. Sure Yao, he created the kingdom of snacks that she yearned for and gave it to her. After she recognized her heart, she ran to his company and pestered him relentlessly. She even told him that if he held her hand, he would say that he was her dog. Han Jing's love turned into hatred, and he said that he had slept with her before. When he saw her, he said without any hesitation, I only trust you. In the resplendent Merlin garden, she proposed to him on the night of the PGI World League. He fulfilled her childhood dream. By the time Sure Yao was standing before Lin Jiej, her eyes were already brimming with tears. She looked at Lin Jiej through the fog, and her lips curled up again and again. This is the man I'm marrying. This is the man I'm marrying. I don't want a prince on a white horse, I only want Lin Jiej. With such thoughts in mind, Sure Yao's lips couldn't help but curl up once more. Then she grabbed Lin Jiej's wrist, and amidst the thunderous applause, they walked up to the stage. The host had already begun to recite the congratulatory speech affectionately. It was only after the newlyweds were on the stage that the male MC spoke up. Mr. Lin Jiej, are you willing to take Miss Sure Yao as your wife, to love her, to accompany her, to be faithful to her, to never leave her in life or death? Lin Jiej turned to look at Sure Yao, and without any hesitation, he replied, I'm willing. Female host. Miss Sure Yao, are you willing to marry Mr. Lin Jiej? Love him, accompany him and be loyal to him, never forsaking him through life and death. Sure Yao turned her head to look at Lin Jiej, and the bliss in her eyes seemed to be on the verge of bursting out. I'm willing. Another round of thunderous applause rang out. However, after the wave of applause quieted down, the host opened his mouth to ask a new wave of questions instead of asking the couple to exchange rings. We've just interviewed the groom, but we haven't interviewed the bride yet. So before exchanging rings, we need to interview the bride and groom. Hearing those words, Lin Jiej blinked his eyes a few times, then a few more times. Chapter 975. The male host. We all know that the destiny between the bride and groom begins in the game. So, can the bride and groom use a phrase related to the game to describe what you would like to say to the other party? Whose question is this? You're clearly making things difficult for me. Sure Yao pondered for a moment before turning to the male host and asking, is the line in the game fine? The male host, sure. Hearing that answer, Sure Yao tilted her head and pondered for a moment before saying a line from King of Glory. 10 li of flowers is not many, but one beauty is just right. Sure Yao's words caused the entire crowd to burst into laughter. The female host also laughed along. The bride sure is adorable. This is the first time I'm seeing a bride referring to the groom as her beauty. The crowd burst into laughter once more. When the crowd finally calmed down a little, the host passed the microphone back to Lin Jiej. Lin Jiej took the microphone, and without much hesitation he said calmly, I'm willing to be your level 3 Spetsnaz helmet. Even if it's ruined, I'll still be able to block a fatal shot for you. The female host exclaimed in astonishment, the groom can do it. The male host clapped his hands. Then, he took a look at the questions written by his friends and family before saying, second question. What are the 3 phrases that the other party said that left the deepest impression on you? Once again the microphone was passed to Sure Yao. She tilted her head and pondered for 3 seconds before saying, first question, what are we having for dinner today? Second question, what else do you want to eat? Third question, are you hungry? Sure Yao's reply had already amused the crowd beneath the stage, and they were already rolling around in laughter. Lin Jiej, who was already used to this, took the microphone and calmly said, first, those who eat my sweets are my people. Second, those who hold my hand are my dogs. Third, Lin Jiej, I'm Sure Yao. When Lin Jiej said the first 2 sentences, the crowd beneath the stage burst into laughter. However, by the time he reached the 3rd sentence, the crowd beneath the stage couldn't find anything funny at all, and their laughter quieted down significantly. However, Sure Yao suddenly turned her head to look at Lin Jiej. Back then, when Lin Jiej was on the verge of strangling Han Jing to death, she had rushed over and said those words to him, It was those words that had saved him, as well as her and him. Otherwise, if he had really caused something to happen to Han Jing, who knew what kind of situation they would be in now? While Shi Yao was still deep in her thoughts, the MC brought up the third question. The third question. Let's have the newlyweds say a threatening word of endearment to one another. Shi Yao took the microphone, blinked her eyes and said, I want to be your son. When I'm happy, I'll warm you up. When I'm not happy, I'll scorch you to death. Oh. Amidst the laughter, Shi Yao passed the microphone over to Lin Jiej. Lin Jiej took it and asked, Can I reject this question? The crowd beneath the stage spoke up in unison. This was especially so for Lin Jiej, who was seated in the first row. Her voice was the loudest, no? Lin Jiej looked at Shi Yao with a conflicted expression before turning to look at the crowd below the stage. After a few seconds of contemplation, he said, I want to make you happy every single day. If there comes a day where I make you unhappy, I'll beat myself to death. Chapter 976. Alright, the last question is for the bride. The groom has just given a speech, so what does the bride have to say to the groom on such a memorable day? Shi Yao held onto the microphone and pondered for roughly half a minute before she said, I would like to say a sentence and a poem. The sentence is, the world is filled with all kinds of flavors. Thank you for the sweetness you gave me. The poem is a 3-line love letter. The first line is Lin, the second line is Jia, and the third line is Gu. Indeed, the most beautiful 3-line love letter is nothing more than your name. Finally fulfilling the wishes of all the guests present, the MC had the bride and groom exchange their rings, and after that, the bride and groom kissed. Shi Yao thought that Lin Jiej would only touch the surface of the water, but who could have thought that he would actually shamelessly stick his tongue into her mouth in front of all the guests? She tried to struggle free, but he seemed to have predicted it, and he hugged her even tighter. Resigned to her fate, she gave up. Amidst the cheers of the crowd, 2 words flashed across her mind. Thank you. Thank you, Lin Jiej. Thank you for coming into my world that year. And thank you for falling in love with me that year too. A second after Han Jing alighted from the car and landed at the entrance of China World Hotel Beijing, he saw a familiar name written on the plaque surrounded by fresh flowers. Lin Jiej, Shi Yao. It had been many days since he last returned to Beijing. If not for a performance, he probably wouldn't have stepped into Beijing. Perhaps there was an arrangement in the unseen world? Otherwise, why would he coincidentally run into their wedding scene when he arrived today? Han Jing, what are you looking at? Han Jing's colleague who was performing with him asked when he stopped in his tracks. Han Jing didn't say a word. Instead, his colleague walked up to him and saw him staring at the wedding plaque. He couldn't help but ask, do you know them? Han Jing recovered from his daze and shook his head. I don't. Then he carried his luggage into China World Hotel Beijing, checked in, and entered his hotel room. There was a joyous occasion to be held today, so there were wedding candies placed in the hotel room. Han Jing subconsciously threw the wedding candies into the bin, but a moment later, he picked them up again. He tore open the package and stuffed a piece of candy into his mouth. The candy was sweet, but his heart was filled with bitterness. Have you ever done something that you regret the most? Do you think about it in your dreams at night and you are constantly annoyed? He really liked her. He liked her down to his bones, but he also felt sorry for her. He had never done anything particularly wrong in his life. The only mistake he had made was for her. Yes, his colleague asked him if he knew them and he said he didn't. How could he have the face to say that he knew them? He thought that she must hate him to the core. Han Jing shifted the candy in his mouth from his left cheek to his right. I'm sorry, the girl I truly liked all those years ago. Bless you, I wish you a happy marriage and a happy marriage for 100 years. The wedding banquet didn't end until 3 in the afternoon. Accompanied by He Tian and Jiang Yu, Shi Yao headed upstairs to change her clothes. Leng Wan didn't follow them. Instead, she headed to the washroom. When she was sitting on the toilet, her phone rang. She picked it up and glanced at it. It was a flight reminder. There were only 2.5 hours left before boarding time, reminding her to go to the airport early to wait for her flight. Leng Wan pursed her lips and called for a cab. After leaving the washroom, she didn't head upstairs. Instead, she decided to inform Shi Yao and the others after leaving. When Leng Wan walked out of the washroom, she didn't notice Lu Benlai walking out of the male washroom. Chapter 977. When Leng Wan walked out of the washroom, she didn't notice Lu Benlai walking out from the men's washroom. Upon seeing her, Lu Benlai subconsciously halted his footsteps. Today was Lin Jiej and Shi Yao's wedding, and as the groomsman, he had to attend to many of their classmates and business partners. It was indeed rather busy, so even though the two of them had met several times already, neither of them had spoken to the other. Upon seeing her, Lu Benlai instinctively moved his lips. The word Nuan that he had called out to her countless times in the past felt like a heavy lead stone pressing down on his lips, preventing him from spitting it out. In the end, he still didn't have the courage to do so. For example, over the past month, he had tried countless times to look for her, but he had always given up on the idea because he didn't dare to do so. Even when she came to look for him, he was blocked by someone, and he didn't dare to pick up her call either, because he was afraid that he wouldn't be able to hold himself back and ask about her past. Yes, everyone had a past, but he was afraid that the words she would tell him would be an outcome that he didn't dare to face. He was afraid that she really loved someone else in the past, afraid that she really didn't love him, and that's why she kept her distance from him. Staring at Leng Wan's back, Lu Benlai's Adam's apple bobbed up and down several times. In the end, he swallowed the words that he was about to call out to her. She didn't notice him and soon she disappeared into the washroom. As if someone had struck his acupoints, Lu Benlai froze on the spot for a moment before walking over to the sink and turning on the tap. After returning to the wedding banquet hall from the washroom, Lu Benlai subconsciously looked around, but Leng Wan was nowhere to be seen. He thought that she might have returned to the bride's room, so he quickly gathered his thoughts from their earlier encounter in the washroom and continued helping Lin Jiej send the guests off. As Leng Wan walked out of the Beijing World Hotel, she turned around to look at the lavish hotel lobby behind her, as if she was looking at her past through the luxurious scenery. It was only when her car, which had been waiting for her for too long, impatiently honked its horn that Leng Wan retracted her gaze, opened the car door and got in. The car door closed, and the driver immediately started the engine. As the car drove off, Leng Wan caught a glimpse of Lu Benlai and Lin Jiej walking out of the elevator with a few brightly dressed men through the windows of the hotel, and through the windows of the hotel. Lu Benlai was so focused on talking to the person beside him that he didn't notice the car at the entrance. Leng Wan didn't respond at all. She simply sat calmly in the car, quietly staring at Lu Benlai. Soon the car arrived at the roadside, and Lu Benlai walked out of the revolving door and stood at the entrance of the hotel. Leng Wan swiftly turned her head around, but she only managed to catch a glimpse of Lu Benlai through the window before the car made a turn, and his silhouette disappeared from her sight. She knew this was the last time she would see him. She knew that after this farewell, they would probably never meet again in this lifetime. As it wasn't a weekend, the traffic wasn't too bad in the afternoon. It didn't take long for the car to arrive at Leng Wan's place. She asked the driver to wait for her downstairs for a while and went upstairs alone. Not long after, she came back down with 2 suitcases. After returning to the car, the driver asked, "Beijing International Airport." Chapter 978. The driver didn't say a word. He started the car and drove toward the airport. The car was silent. Leng Wan leaned against the back of her seat and stared out the window. Eventually she closed her eyes. Her expression was calm, devoid of any emotions. However, when the driver stopped the car and informed her that they had arrived, she opened her eyes and realized that they were moist. When she got out of the car, she glanced at the rearview mirror and saw that her eyes were reddened. After entering the airport, Leng Wan swiftly checked in her luggage and passed through the security check. She waited in the resting area for less than 10 minutes before the announcement announcing her boarding. Leng Wan stood up, and before heading to the boarding gate, she took out a paperclip from her purse and opened up her phone's card slot. She took out her SIM card and held it in her hand for a moment before breaking it into 2. She casually tossed it into a nearby trash can before placing her phone back into her bag. After which, she handed over her boarding pass and entered the boarding gate. Roughly 15 minutes after boarding the plane, a safety notice suddenly sounded in the cabin. Soon, the flight attendants began to check the passengers' seatbelts. Not too long later, the plane began to move. Roughly 10 minutes later, the speed of the plane began to pick up. Just as the plane was about to take off, Lung Nuan, who was sitting by the window and staring at her through the window, couldn't help but burst into tears. Lu Benlai only returned home at 11 at night. Since he was drunk, he didn't drive. Instead, he had someone send him to the entrance of the neighborhood. Lu Benlai walked along the streets of the neighborhood and made several turns before he finally arrived at the building he lived in. The security guard on duty on the first floor was still Little Chun. Upon seeing him, he greeted him, "Mr. Lu." Lu Benlai nodded. He was just about to reach for his access card to swipe the elevator when he realized that he had forgotten to bring it with him. Thus, he halted his footsteps and turned to the security guard. "Please help me swipe the elevator." "All right, Mr. Lu." Little Chun took the access card from the table and walked toward the elevator. At the same time, he chatted with Lu Benlai, who was following behind him. "Mr. Lu, did you drink again today? However, you didn't drink as much as you did yesterday. You were a drunken mess yesterday. I called out to you several times, but you didn't respond at all. If your girlfriend hadn't sent you back, you might have found a random place to sleep yesterday." "Girlfriend?" Lu Benlai caught on to the sensitive term. "Yes, it's Miss Lung. Didn't you say that she's your girlfriend? He even told me to let her pass if she were to come. He did drink too much last night. When he woke up this morning, he couldn't even tell what year it was. Not only did he not remember how he got home, he couldn't even remember when he took off his clothes. Vaguely, he remembered that he seemed to have done something with a woman, but his house was empty. Other than him, there were no other clues. He thought that it was a dream, but now Little Chun told him that Lung Nuan had sent him home yesterday. With this thought in mind, Lu Benlai asked, "When did she leave last night?" Chapter 979. As Little Chun spoke, he had Lu Benlai wait for a moment before running back to his desk. He took out an envelope from his drawer and passed it over to Lu Benlai. "This is what Miss Lung gave me. I was quite curious, so I asked her why she didn't send you upstairs. She said that the taxi she called had been waiting for a long time, and she was in a hurry to leave." Lu Benlai didn't respond to Little Chen's prattling. Instead, he squeezed the envelope, and he felt something hard. A slight frown appeared on his forehead. As if sensing something, he tore open the envelope and saw a bank card and an access card inside. The bank card was his secondary card, and he insisted on giving it to her, even though she had never spent a single cent from it. The access card was the key to his building, and he had only given it to her. Back then, when he bought the apartment, he had thought that she would be the only female owner of the building. What did she mean by returning these things to him? Was she intending to break up with him and cut all ties with him? But last night she had gone upstairs, and she had even stayed there for a very long time. Thus, what he thought was just a wet dream wasn't a wet dream at all, but something that had really happened. With such thoughts in mind, Lu Benlai's chest suddenly burned with rage. How could she do this? Is she going to go back on her word after sleeping with me? "Mr. Lu, I've swiped your card for the elevator." "Mr. Lu? Mr. Lu." Little Chun called out to Lu Benlai several times before the latter finally snapped out of his daze. Ignoring Little Chen's words, he whipped out his phone and gave Lung Nuan a call. "Sorry, the number you have dialed is currently unavailable." He dialed the number several times, only to receive the same reply. An ominous premonition suddenly struck his heart. Without any hesitation, he dashed out of the neighborhood, hailed a cab and headed to her place. On the way there, he called He Tian Tian and Zhang Yu, but the reply he received was that he hadn't seen Lung Nuan since the afternoon. They were also looking for her, but they weren't able to find her. After hanging up the call, Lu Benlai urged the driver to drive even faster. He had no idea what was wrong with him, but his heart was beating so quickly that it felt like an eternity. It was only a 10-minute walk, but when he arrived at Lung Nuan building, He felt as if a century had passed. He tossed a bill to the driver, and without even giving him the change, he rushed into the building. He rushed to the floor where Lung Wan lived. He pressed the doorbell anxiously, but the door didn't budge at all. There was no sign of it opening at all. In the end, he rang the doorbell too often and woke up the neighbors. The neighbor was Lung Wan's landlord, and he recognized Lu Benlai. Upon seeing him, he was taken aback for a moment before asking, "Are you here to look for Lung Wan? Don't you know? She told me early this morning that she wouldn't be staying here anymore. She didn't even let me refund her rent and deposit. She just left. Gone. Getting." Lu Benlai's heart skipped a beat. Where did he go? Did she tell you? That's a funny question. You're her boyfriend. If you don't know where she went, how would I know? Chapter 980. As he spoke, the landlord casually took out a bunch of keys from the shoe cabinet and dangled them in front of Lu Benlai. Lu Benlai was very familiar with the plush toy hanging on the keys. He had bought it with Lung Wan for 10 renminbi at the roadside of the night market. He knew that the landlord wasn't lying to him. He knew that she really didn't want to live here anymore. He also knew that no matter how much he didn't want to face such a situation, she had still left. After apologizing to the landlord, Lu Benlai turned around and walked down the stairs without saying a word. "Mr. Lu, this is the 30th floor. Why are you taking the stairs instead of the elevator?" "Mr. Lu," the landlord chased after him and warned him several times, but seeing that he didn't respond at all, he finally gave up and allowed him to go. After leaving the apartment, Lu Benlai wandered aimlessly along the streets for a while. It was only when the night breeze had calmed him down that he found a random bench by the roadside and sat down. Unwilling to give up, he took out his phone and continued calling her, one after another. No matter how many times he called, the only reply he received was, "I'm sorry, the phone of the number you have dialed is currently unavailable." He had no idea how many times he had called her. It was only when he suddenly stopped in exhaustion that he realized that there were many missed calls from her in his call history. 1 2 3 4 5. 47 48. 73 74. 86. 87. 95 96 97 98. The more he counted, the more panicked Lu Benlai became. How he wished that the number would stay at 99. However, after counting for an entire hour, the number of missed calls from her remained at 100. "Lu Benlai, have you heard of such a story? There was a couple who had a falling out. The boy would come to the girl's apartment every night to coax her for 99 consecutive days. The girl thought that as long as the boy came again tomorrow, she would be with him once more. On the 100th night, the boy came, but when the girl rushed down the stairs, the boy told her that they should end it. Do you know why? It's because in love, it's impossible for one person to give his all. So the boy is willing to give his all, but he won't fall in love with someone who doesn't love him at all. So, the 99th time is to persuade the girl to stay, and the 100th time is to give up." She actually called him so many times, but he actually didn't pay attention to it. 99 calls. She was trying to persuade him to stay. She gave him 99 chances. In the end, when she completely gave up, he finally regained his senses. The two of them had always been fine. They had never quarreled. It was just this one time. Just this one conflict. How did it end up like this? All these years he had been fighting for her. He wanted her to live the best life in the most prosperous city. He didn't sleep at 3 in the morning, but he still worked hard. He slept 4 hours a day and worked hard. He went to talk about cooperation with a high fever. He fought with his life on the line and finally conquered the entire empire. He wanted to give it to her, but she wasn't there anymore. These thoughts flashed across Lu Benlai's mind, and his fingers that were holding the phone of his phone began to tremble. He tried his best to suppress his emotions, but of his tears and a but of and a terry off of. Chapter 981. Lin Jiej and Shi Yao spent their wedding night at the Lin family's old mansion. The wedding room was a bedroom that Grandpa Lin had instructed his servants to clean up. As Shi Yao was pregnant, she had to pay extra attention to her surroundings, so they didn't add any new furniture. Even so, a lot of effort had been put into the decorations. There were peanuts, lotus seeds, longans, and red dates hidden under the crimson bedsheet. Auntie Sun had lit a pair of red candles in advance, and the flickering flames made the entire room seem even more festive and warm. The entire wedding was impeccably perfect. The only thing that left Lin Jiej regretful was that there were only red candles in the bridal chamber on their wedding night, but they couldn't consummate their marriage. Even so, Lin Jiej still spent quite some time with Shi Yao. After all, he couldn't eat meat, but he could still quench his cravings with some meat soup. In truth, the two of them hadn't slept for too long last night, and they didn't have much time to rest either. They were already exhausted, but they were too excited to fall asleep. It felt like many things had happened yesterday, but in the blink of an eye, they were already legally married. From the school uniform to the wedding gown, it seemed like only a blink of an eye. It feels like time has passed so quickly. In my memory, you were still the little fiancé that my grandfather forced upon me. How long has it been? From Shi Yao to Yao, and now you've become my wife. That's right, that's right. I always feel that you're still that boy who threatened me in the corner of the old mansion's backyard. Do you know, on the day I entered university I saw you. The person who welcomed me was a senior. She was infatuated with me and excitedly told me that he was G University's school hunk. I was so calm at that time. The senior even asked me curiously, "Why are you so calm?" There aren't many girls who can remain so calm after seeing you. I didn't say a word, but do you know what I was thinking? I was thinking that you're a kumquat, golden on the outside, sour and bitter on the inside. Lin Jiej. Shi Yao, speaking of which, when did you start noticing me? Lin Jiej. Why don't you take a guess? In the second half of my freshman year? No. When I was halfway through my second half of my freshman year. It was a little earlier than that. It was when you first started your freshman year. In the elevator at SPK Mall. Just like that, Lin Jiej and Shi Yao chatted with one another until they finally fell asleep. The two of them didn't have much of an impression of what had transpired. The next morning, the entire family was supposed to have breakfast together. Shi Yao was the first to wake up, and she took a look at the time. It was almost time for breakfast, so she quickly woke Lin Jiej up. After washing up, just as the two of them were about to head out of the bedroom, Auntie Sun knocked on the door and entered. "Young master, young madam, you're awake? Let me help you pack your things." Since Shi Yao and Lin Jiej had slept on the bed last night, it was impossible for the lotus seeds, peanuts, red dates, and longans to be on the bed. She also noticed that the bedspread was on the sofa, so she flipped it open to look around, but she wasn't able to find any of those things. So she scanned the entire room carefully, even going as far as to look under the bed. Putting aside the pile of peanuts, longans, lotus seeds, and red dates, she couldn't even find a single peanut. That was weird. How could so many things disappear in a single night? Chapter 982. Lin Jiej. Recalling that he had placed those things on the table, he subconsciously raised his hand to point to the table beside him and say, "Isn't it over there?" But before he could say anything, Shi Yao, who was standing by his side, had already pointed at him and interjected, "Auntie Sun, you're here to take those things away? There's no need to look anymore, Lin Jiej has eaten all of them." Hearing those words, Auntie Sun turned to look at Lin Jiej with a bizarre expression. Noticing Auntie Sun's gaze, Lin Jiej was stunned for a moment before he turned to look at Shi Yao. When he went to the toilet in the middle of the night and saw a table full of food, Shi Yao couldn't help but want to have a taste of it. After tasting it for a while, she eventually finished it all and flashed a sweet smile at Lin Jiej before shifting the blame onto him. He was hungry last night, so he ate all of those things, leaving nothing behind, right? Lin Jiej? The words that Lin Jiej wanted to say were stuck in his throat, but upon hearing Shi Yao's question, he nodded stiffly and replied, "That's right." Seemingly dissatisfied with his reaction, Shi Yao pouted her lips. Without any hesitation, Lin Jiej spoke up once more with a resolute expression. "That's right. I ate it in the middle of the night last night." Hearing those words, Auntie Sun took it for granted and replied with an "oh." After which, she told them to hurry downstairs for breakfast before leaving the bedroom. After Auntie Sun closed the door behind her, Lin Jiej immediately turned to look at Shi Yao. Shi Yao's eyes darted around for a moment before she met Lin Jiej's gaze and spoke up with a logical tone. "Why are you looking at me? Look at me, you ate them too. It's the one in my stomach." He kept saying, "Daddy, I'm hungry, Daddy, I'm hungry." So I had no choice but to feed those things to the one in my stomach. Since he's calling me Daddy, I'm feeding him on your behalf. Since I'm feeding him on your behalf, that means that you're the one who ate them. So, is there a problem with that? And no problem at all. What problem could there be? What problem could there possibly be? Hearing those words, Shi Yao immediately burst into laughter. She pulled Lin Jiej's arm and rushed downstairs excitedly for breakfast. The entire family was seated in the dining room, and as soon as they saw Shi Yao and Lin Jiej, they immediately called out, "Yao, sit down." Nevertheless, they still had to abide by the rules, so before eating, they first offered Grandpa Lin a cup of tea. Of course, after the tea was served, the elders had to give red packets. Old Mr. Lin prepared 2 red packets, each one heavy and heavy. "Yao Yao, this is yours." "Thank you, grandfather." Shi Yao accepted the gift with both hands. "Jiej, this is yours," Grandpa Lin said as he passed the red packet into Shi Yao's hands. Lin Jiej. After the tea was served, Lin Jiej and Shi Yao took their seats. Everyone at the table urged Shi Yao to eat more while asking her what she wanted to eat. It was only after Shi Yao picked up her chopsticks that everyone turned to look at Lin Jiej. "Grandpa Lin, Auntie Sun said that you ate all the peanuts and longanians in the middle of the night?" "Lin Gubei, it's one thing for you to eat, but there's nothing left?" Jiang Wanggui shot Lin Jiej a glance, allowing him to comprehend the situation. "Lin Jai, it's one thing that you didn't leave a single one, but you even secretly ate them while Yao Yao was asleep? That's too much." Lin Jiej. You're tuning in to the Li Mei Sword of Destiny YouTube channel. We're so grateful for your support, and don't forget to subscribe to join us on this incredible journey through captivating stories. Your generosity through donations truly makes a world of difference, as it's the primary source of revenue that allows me to expand and enhance this channel for you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for being a part of this adventure.